reportedly will be holding a press conference next week. Now, we say reportedly because it has been in a couple of reports out of the Middle East that he will talk on perhaps Wednesday of next week. Then others saying, well, they're not really sure if that's the case. One thing is certain. When Carlos Ghosn does finally talk, whether it's a press conference, whether it's one-on-one interviews, he's going to have a lot to say. There's also a report that he had a French passport that allowed him to get into the country of Lebanon. And finally, as you take a look at shares of Nissan Renault, we're going all the way back to the day when Carlos Ghosn was arrested in November of 2018. The stock is down 35%. Guys, we'll get more developments, I'm sure, later today and over the next couple of days, exactly, or maybe not exactly, but more details on how he was able to get out of Japan.
What's interesting, Phil, and maybe most interesting, if you know, in reading the articles, is that the Japanese have done very little to try and figure out up to this point exactly how it happened. They haven't contacted the airport. The fact that it fell over this New Year period, which is so sacred to the Japanese, it just adds to the whole story of, oh, well, okay, he's gone. We'll figure it out later.
Yeah, but you know that they have to be smarting from this. I mean, this is the ultimate thumbing your nose at authority. From the Japanese perspective, they're looking at this saying, wait a second. We had this guy under house arrest. We had people and cameras watching the house, and he still got out of the country? I mean, that is the ultimate Keystone Cop kind of maneuver there from the Japanese perspective. And I'm sure as more questions are asked within Japan, you'll start to see the government respond in some fashion in terms of saying, okay, at a minimum, we've got to figure out how this happened.
Phil, I want to know what this actually does to this two-decade alliance between Nissan and Renault. We've already seen the cracks emerge after Ghosn was ousted. But then when you have headlines like France saying it won't extradite Ghosn if he goes there, I can't help but think that it only adds to the tension that is emerging.
Completely adds to it, Morgan. Keep in mind that the French government, it owns a chunk of Renault. So they are in this partnership. It's not like they're like, well, it's one of our companies and they're in a partnership with a Japanese company. Oh, no, it is the French government which has a major say in what happens with Renault. And this relationship is fragile to begin with and has been since the arrest of Carlos Ghosn. And by the way, Carlos Ghosn is being investigated in France. So there is the possibility that France, as they do their own investigation, may come up and say, look, we believe that he should be extradited from Lebanon. We don't know if that'll happen, but that's another element of this that certainly plays into the dynamic of how the French government handles what's a very awkward situation.
Yeah, awkward, intricate, Phil. All that stuff applies. I know you'll be tracking it. Thanks very much. Talk to you soon.
You bet.
We could see some record highs on this first trading day of the year. Look how we're set up right now. The S&P set to open up just about 17 points. That would bring it just right about to its intraday all-time high. Dow as well might be just short of that, up 146 at this hour. And the NASDAQ looking to open up about 72 points. More Squawk in the Street, live from Post 9 at the NYSE when we return.
Through the AT&T network, introducing a new podcast, ESPN Daily. When you want to go beyond your feed, when you want to get inside the score, when you want to get behind the highlight, there's ESPN Daily. Go deeper into the stories of the moment. Get the exclusive access and insider perspective that only ESPN can give you. ESPN Daily, hosted by me, Mina Kimes. Listen and favorite ESPN Daily on TuneIn.
Start hearing more of what you want.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations,
Live commercial-free news,
and every live NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL game.
Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Pascal gobbles up the rebound and slams it down.
Get your favorite NBA team right here on TuneIn.
A step back, deep three is up and in.
Search NBA on TuneIn and hear all the action. The NBA lives on TuneIn.
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour, but we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
Hello, I'm Nat Coombs from ESPN's The Nat Coombs Show, which admittedly is 1 out of 10 for original podcast name, but 10 out of 10 for NFL chat. Every week, we're dropping 4 episodes with an all-pro lineup of terrific guests, journalists, comedians, players, coaches, you name it, all getting you up to speed with everything gridiron. The Nat Coombs Show, American football, British accent. Add to your favorites and listen on TuneIn.
Eight minutes before the opening bell, all the major averages poised to open higher, and we're even on record watch, so we'll see how that goes. In the meantime, let's bring in Slate Stone Wealth senior market strategist and CNBC contributor Kenny Polcari. Kenny, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you, Morgan.
What are you watching right now?
So what are you watching? First of all, it's Thursday, Friday of kind of a vacation week, so I don't think you can put a whole lot of emphasis into what actually happens. We see it. Futures are up this morning. Market's going to be higher. I really think you have to start to wait till next week when everybody's back at their desk and you start the conversations again. Earnings going to start on the 14th of January in earnest, so there's going to be a lot of talk around that. Really the guidance, because remember, the earnings of history, as you and I talk about all the time, they've already happened. They're done. It's really about what the message is going forward. So between earnings, between trade, and between politics, I think that's really going to be the driver at least through the first quarter. Once we get a better idea come Super Tuesday, who the Democrats are really kind of pushing to the top of the list.
So the way to think about this then, Kenny, is that this rotation we've seen towards risk assets, that's likely to continue, at least in the near term?
Well, so here's what I think. I actually think we're going to see the market come under a little bit of pressure. I mean, unlike today where it feels once again, this continuation of this surge, if you really look what's happened, the market's up 14% since October, right? With really very little pullback. And I think a lot of that was kind of the year-end window dressing, the Santa Claus rally, the lack of people locking in profits and into that surge at the end of the year. I do think you're going to see some of that come the second, third week of January. People locking some profits in ahead of earnings, kind of ahead of some geopolitical stuff that happened over this week. We saw in not only North Korea, but also the Middle East. And so I think that's going to give people a reason to lock in some profits, watch the market come under maybe a little bit of pressure. Nothing dramatic, but certainly a little bit of pressure. And then I think the focus turns back to the macro, the fundamentals, right? The earnings, like I said, is going to be a big conversation for the rest of January.
And, on the other hand, Kenny, people wondering if we could be looking at something like a little bit of a rush by retail investors to get a piece of this. There hasn't really been a lot of inflow. Maybe January would be the time. Happened in 2018. Now, that you did get a big break in the market after an initial surge. But any signs of that?
Well, listen, I always find this conversation interesting because it makes it appear as if the retail investor's been sitting out this whole ride and hasn't done anything, and all of a sudden goes, oh my God, I got to jump in, and they jump in at the end, right? That's what it sounds like. But for money that we manage and for the people that we're talking to, they've been involved in this rally. Retail investors have their money investors. They may be a little less aggressive as we get closer to what they perceive as a top, and maybe they are waiting for that market to pull back. But, I don't necessarily think that there's this rush by retail to get in because they've missed this whole move at all. If you're a long-term investor, a retail long-term investor, you're in this market. You should have been in this market. Your advisor should have had you in this market. Any advisor that has been telling you as a long-term investor to sit it out and wait you should probably talk about getting a new advisor. But for the most part, I think retail's comfortable where they are. I think there are going to be certain pockets that the retail investors are very excited about. I mean, you can't help but get all worked up about Amazon and the retail story that's coming out, and Apple and all that stuff. And those names will continue to perform well. But I think for the broader market, retail is in. Retail is smarter than they were, 3 and 4 years ago. So I think they're a little bit more methodical. They continue to understand how to play that game. And so I don't see a rush of all of a sudden this retail money coming rushing into the market. I think we're there.
All right, Kenny Polcari, thanks for joining us today. The opening bell is just minutes away. Stay with us.
Hi, I'm Ricky Gervais, and I'm hosting the Golden Globes.
Oh, a decent drill would make DIY so much easier.
Whether you're laying flooring or fitting shelves, head to the B&Q Tool Shop. Get hands-on in store with our wide range of drills, including the Bosch Universal Impact Combi Drill for just £80. The B&Q Tool Shop. You can do it when you B&Q it.
Having to deal with financial stuff can make you feel... ah! But at Money Supermarket, we make you feel... ah. That's because we go further to help you get money calm. We don't just compare. We cut prices to help you get better car insurance deals. Get money calm. Money Supermarket.
Want TuneIn to remind you when the big NFL game is about to get underway? Be sure notifications are allowed on your phone and search NFL on the TuneIn app. Find the game you want to hear under events and tap Notify Me. We'll let you know exactly when it's time to listen in for kickoff. Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted!
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown to Keenan.
Search NFL today. TuneIn is remembering the biggest college sports moments of the decade, like this one from 2011, when UConn point guard Kemba Walker hits the game-winning jumper in the Big East tournament against Pittsburgh.
Here's Walker with 4, stops, moves left, steps back, the jumper, it's good! At the buzzer, and Kemba Walker has done it again!
Search college sports on TuneIn to be there for the moments that go down in history.
Pascal gobbles up the rebound and slammed it down.
Catch your favorite NBA team right here on TuneIn.
A step back, deep three is up and in.
Search NBA on TuneIn and hear all the action. The NBA lives on TuneIn.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted!
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown to Keenan.
Search NFL today.
You're watching CNBC Squawk on the Street live from the financial capital of the world. Opening bell set to ring in just about 1 minute's time. We're on record watch, as we said. Look like the Dow may just fall a tiny bit short right off the open. Needs 163 for a new record. Some of the stocks we're watching today, I had my eye on Wells Fargo, got downgraded by Baird to a sell today. They like Charlie Scharf, but they just think the whole thing's going to take a little bit longer than maybe some people expect to turn around.
That group has rallied as a complete block, and so I guess now is the time to figure out if it's justified based on the name, based on domestic versus global exposure, and all the rest of it. But Wells has had a good run at least recently.
All right, well, they're about to ring the bell here. You hear the clapping already, so in just a moment you're going to get that. But yeah, financials have been a good group, and we've been watching the bulk of those stocks continue to rise really towards the end of the year. You've had a little bit of a tick up in interest rates, which certainly doesn't hurt. Maybe a little better economic picture as well, which some people have liked. But there's the opening bells, the S&P 500 at the CNBC Real-Time Exchange. Here's the big board, Blue Ridge Bank shares celebrating its recent listing on the NYSE American and at the NASDAQ. Mentor, a national youth mentoring movement. All right, so we'll watch the major averages open all strongly across the board. Another stock, guys, to keep an eye on, Morgan, is Tesla. Tesla gets a street high bump in its price target today to $515 at Canaccord. They say, quote, the year of the EV revolution is going to gather speed.
Yeah, the year of the EV revolution is going to gather speed. We also know, something we've been talking about, is that we're going to see more EV models come out from other competitors as well. So it'll be just interesting to see how all of that shapes out. Meantime, you're expecting auto sales, most of them probably tomorrow. There is a chance, I think, that we could get the Tesla numbers later today, so we'll be on watch for that. Meantime, the company's saying that it's going to begin delivering those Shanghai-made Model 3s to the public. Remember, they started delivering to their employees earlier this week. Next next week, January 7th, so that's going to be one to watch as well.
You know, on that note, Ford also, by the way, got a big downgrade today, and that was to a sell. Underperform at Evercore. So as we're talking about auto sales and where we are in that cycle, Ford gets cut to a sell. That stock has opened
flattish.
Yeah, basically flat. But again, to a touch higher, you do have an overall higher market.
And that was also kind of a relative value call versus GM. And GM opens up 1% on the day. So it seems as if, the market has already been kind of moving in that direction, feeling like GM looks a lot cheaper for what it's worth. But really the overall kind of where we are in the auto sales cycle is maybe something that will be answered today a little bit by the monthly sales.
You guys get a check of this Mahaney note, Mark Mahaney over at RBC. You know, everybody this time of year sort of puts out their predictions and their big lists of surprises for the year ahead. And Mark is certainly on that list with his own. And some interesting things that he's talking about here. Maybe most importantly, at least that jumped out to me, Uber and Lyft achieved profitability in 2020, along with the fact that the IPOs that really laid a big fat egg in 2019 roar back, in his words, in 2020. And it's Uber and Lyft among them, Pinterest, Chewy, and some of the other names like Peloton on that list too.
Yeah, definitely a contrarian call, especially based on what we've seen from Uber and Lyft, and also what those companies themselves have put out in terms of forecasts for profitability too. The other one that got my attention in that list was Netflix subs. The ads there could accelerate in 2020. Obviously, it's been such a big focus of Wall Street right now, and whether we're going to continue to see that slowing subscriber growth and what that could mean, again, in the face of all this competition.
How about Amazon? Amazon's profitability plummets in 2020, according to Mark Mahaney. Considering what the stock did in 2019, it had a decent year, but it underperformed dramatically the S&P.
It did, and also, I mean, it's been considered that 2019 was kind of the heavy investment year for Amazon. Maybe it would kind of transition back toward harvesting profits and showing a little better bottom line. That call says not really. The question is whether the market would be okay with that, because historically the conventional wisdom is you actually buy the CapEx cycles. And the other thing he did say is that he expects the internet sector to get another dividend pay.
I was just looking at that.
But he doesn't really say which stock. I mean, you could easily see Alphabet, deciding to pay a dividend. The question would be how investors would interpret that, because that often has been one of these signals that, okay, hyper-growth phase is over. Now we're into kind of boring old regular business, which kind of happened with Microsoft, actually. It initiated a dividend at a time when its super growth phase back in the 90s was coming to an end.
I don't know, though. I mean, just what we saw in terms of multiple expansion and just the vast outperformance of Apple last year could probably be turning that narrative on its head.
Yes, Apple did not really conform to that idea that, once you start to be a dividend payer, you slow down. That is very true, although that dividend yield is down to about 1% right now because the stock has done so well.
He throws out Facebook as a possibility, which would be interesting. That stock had such a monster year, up 50%. Booking as a possibility, thinks maybe one of those three, along with the one you mentioned, Google. The other thing he talks about as it relates to some of the internet names and Facebook specifically is that no material regulatory action is taken against the major internet platforms in the year ahead. As we said before, maybe they get a slap on the wrist. They don't get smacked upside the head.
Right, and also we're talking about a 12-month window. I mean, does anyone think that whatever's going to happen from the government is in a significant policy way is going to be within a year? Probably not.
An election year, no less.
Yeah, exactly. So it almost seems as if it serves almost everybody's purpose who's going after these companies, just to have them stand out there as targets as opposed to put anything tangible in place.
Yeah. I mean, meantime, if you look at what is performing the best in terms of sectors on the S&P this morning, it is tech stocks, led higher by some of those semi-names again, also consumer discretionary and communication services, many of the names we've just been talking about.
High beta tech again, it's Western Digital and semi-cap and things like that. That's so far gotten a lift.
Netflix is up about 2%.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, Facebook, as you said, though, communication services, Facebook's up just about 1%. And, of course, Apple, which is coming off its own incredible year, leaving that behind. It's up another 1.25%. New 52-week high, just pushing almost $300. Yeah. $297 for shares of Apple right now.
Was going to mention BlackRock, which actually got an upgrade today as well, I believe from Wells, up about 1%. And the call here is that, look, just follow where the market has already decided the assets are going. It's obviously the blue chip name. in the publicly traded asset manager universe, and also kind of a beneficiary of the pain of some of the more focused active asset managers, and really doesn't trade as that much of a premium at all. In fact, it's a discount to the overall market. So that call seems to work. It seems like that's more of a kind of a continuation of the trend type call, but it is getting a little bit of traction with that stock up 1%.
Yeah. As I mentioned before, you have a number of the semiconductor stocks that are rallying, some of the biggest gainers in the S&P again today as well. A number of price target increases, some different analyst calls, I think, helping propel that sector higher. And then, of course, it has been such a proxy for any kind of China trade deal possibilities as well.
Let's take a look at shares of United Airlines as well, up better than 2%. It's one of the bigger gainers this morning. That stock got a nice upgrade this morning over at Evercore. Not as much exposure to the MAX issues as some of the other airlines have had. We've been looking at that story today, how Airbus takes over from Boeing for the first time in a number of years in terms of airplane deliveries. Obviously, the MAX, is having an issue on that front. Whether that is a longer-lasting thing, who knows? But notable, just given the size and scale of what Boeing is, what it means to the economy, and frankly, how widely held it is for investors, the ones who are watching this program. Boeing is in an awful lot of portfolios, and it's going to be really key to see how that stock does this year. 328 is where it is. It's up a little shy right now than 1%.
Yeah, I mean, I think institutional investors have been very slow to back away from Boeing, and they really believe in the long-term story to such a degree that the stock has held up better than one might expect, given all the news flow.
Yeah, and certainly we saw Airbus top its own forecasts in terms of deliveries in 2019, and now, largest aerospace manufacturer in the world based on these numbers, given everything that is going on with Boeing. But Airbus had its own issues this past year as well in terms of some production stuff, having to lower and trim its forecast back in early fall as well. So it goes back to this investor theme that you have this duopoly, and this duopoly that's not likely to be disrupted anytime soon. But Boeing, this is going to be another big year, another big month, I should say, for Boeing, because you have production halting for 737 MAX, and you have Dave Calhoun officially coming in and taking the helm as CEO this month as well. So we'll see what happens.
Talking about the airlines a little bit makes me think of Warren Buffett and United and his big stamp of approval on that space. And it brings us to the story we haven't gotten to yet. Tiffany, inviting Buffett to make a bid against LVMH, and Buffett saying, I'm going to take a pass on this one. And he is sitting on you want to call it a war chest, whatever you want to call it. He is sitting on a mountain of cash, $120 billion. Wondering what he's going to do with that. It's been a while since they've done a deal.
It's quite a while since he's done a deal of any significant size. I do think you have to keep in mind that if you are a company in play, it's worth the phone call to Buffett, right? This is the second time we've heard this story. There was a company that had a tentative agreement to be acquired, and you want to check to see if Berkshire Hathaway might be interested.
Yeah, why not?
Take it down all at once. There's tremendous prestige, by the way, in selling to Berkshire. So it's not as if maybe Tiffany thought that it would fit perfectly within his portfolio. A couple things about the war chest. First of all, it's a lot of cash, not all of it unencumbered, of course. They have a big insurance business that it's kind of spoken for on some level. Also, the stake in Apple, I don't know, I think it's worth about 1/7 of what Berkshire's market value is. It's doubled. So he owns plenty of equity exposure.
Sure.
And so the question is, do we need to, he probably wants to find something that's a compelling value and it's not necessarily out there.
I'm glad you just said that, because that's where I was going to go next. Is it a broader comment on valuations in the market at large? That Buffett looks across the landscape and says, you know what? Market's gone up a lot. Valuations are high. Things are just too expensive. I'm just going to sit and wait until something happens in the market, and then I'm going to pounce on something.
Yeah, which I think is exactly the type of commentary we've heard from him in recent months when he's spoken to Becky Quick and come out. Berkshire Hathaway, the Class B shares, though, they're up 12% over the past 12 months, speaking to how much, despite all of the different businesses, despite that giant float, that cash pile, the fact that this is a company that is underperforming, and investors have been, I guess you could say, impatient to see something done with that money.
It's a big equity portfolio with a big cash drag in a bull market. Plus, of course, they own a railroad, and there's all kinds of back and forth in terms of what other exposures the company has on a wholly owned basis. But I think what the cash pile also says is, and Buffett's on record that he hates bonds. He's kind of been, you could say wrong about he thought where yields should be, and he's holding cash instead of instead of bonds. But in terms of the not seeing values, I mean, one of the better Buffett quotes of all time is that he views investing as a game like you're playing baseball, you're a hitter, and there's no called strikes. So you can just let him go by, let him go by, let him go by until you see the perfect pitch. He's not going to feel compelled to swing.
A metaphor like that.
No, it's the perfect one. He's not going to feel compelled to swing just because, he hasn't done so in a while.
Yeah, he's gonna take a look at the landscape and see how everything looks. And you mentioned his past conversations with Becky. I do remember one of the most recent ones where she asked him about Apple, and he said, I'd love for it to come down a little bit, love for it to be lower. We asked if you'd buy any more. Are there many things that someone like Buffett would look across the investing landscape today and said, I'd like to buy more of that? I don't know.
One thing is he hasn't bought a whole lot more of his own shares. I mean, and that's something that some investors feel like is a little bit of a missed opportunity, that he's not done a bigger buyback, only at modest levels. It's clearly he does it only reluctantly and only under certain pretty strict terms. So, that's going to remain a question.
Yeah. By the way, we just were above the prior closing high on the Dow, the record high. We were about plus 165, and we're right about that area right now. Of course, Bob Pisani's watching all of it and what's moving on the floor. Hey, Bob.
And the important thing here is a great start to the new year, Scotty. 5-1 advancing the declining stocks, new highs across the board in several big global sectors. The key story today is actually not in the U.S. China cut its bank reserve ratios again. This, in theory, frees up more money for lending by the banks over there. Essentially, it means more liquidity, folks. That's the important thing. This is igniting a nice rally over in Europe, the Euro Stock 600. This is a new high for that index. And remember, Europe has lagged the United States for years now. Last year, up about 20% overall for some of the key European indexes. So finally, a decent year for them. Hang Seng also not keeping up to the United States last year, finally doing a little bit better. Shanghai also 7-month high there. Let's take a look at here in the United States. Chinese stocks here, MCHI, the broader China ETF, sitting up nicely here. Alibaba, new high here at the New York Stock Exchange. That's important. Semis, of course. This is all China related. Emerging markets, the EEM index, metals and mining strong. Utilities are lagging here. So again, you see the effects of more liquidity in China, even here on the U.S. stock market. The question is, what's 2020 going to look like? Exact opposite situation. I keep emphasizing this, how different it was. On January 1st, 2019, we had earnings recession fears, and the stocks were cheap. 14 times, 13.9 forward earnings. That's below the historic average. 15 or 16 is typical. Here today, January 1st, 2020, we don't have any recession or earnings recession fears immediately on the horizon, and stocks are expensive. Exactly the opposite. 18 times forward earnings. That's pricey here. So the question is, can we get some better earnings in 2020 so we don't have to have such a high multiple at 18? That's a little bit risky. So here's 2018. We had this huge push up in earnings growth largely because of the tax cuts, also an improving economy. 2019, we're not done yet, but essentially, let's call it flat. I've been saying flattish for 6 months. I think that's a fair way to characterize it. And early estimates for 2020, almost 10%. We all know that these analyst estimates tend to be high. The real numbers here, probably 3-4 percentage points lower. So a lot of the strategists have 5% earnings growth for 2020 or so. That's a fair number. At least that would take some pressure off of that earnings multiple. Let's take a look at the early reporters here. We've got a number of companies, 15 or so, that do November ending quarters, including some very big companies. And you want to see how the analysts kind of reduce their numbers or increase them for the first quarter. So we had estimates lower for some of the big reporters. FedEx in particular. Nike had the numbers lowered by analysts in the first quarter. Micron, General Mills, and Carnival. That's a pretty big group. That's about 2/3 of the reporters. 10 out of the 15 had the numbers lowered by analysts in the first quarter after the reports came out at the end of November. Some, like AutoZone and Costco, they had it raised here, but those companies have been doing terrifically overall. What's the story? It's a very mixed picture here. You still want to watch. The number's not clear that we're going to have a big earnings pickup by the early reporters so far. Remember something here for the Santa Claus rally here. We always like to watch this. Last 5 days of the 2019, first two 2020, average gain 1.3%. So far at the open here, we're up 0.7%. A little bit below typical numbers here, Mike, but given the run-up that we had in the month of December, maybe that's to be expected. Back to you.
Bob, thanks very much. For more on the morning's movers, let's get uptown to Seema Modi at the NASDAQ. Hi, Seema.
Hey, Michael, as Bob pointed out, an injection of stimulus from the Chinese central bank is certainly one way to kick off the new year. And Chinese strategists say there's more to come amid renewed concern around the Chinese economy and whether its growth rate will break below 6%. On that note, a number of Chinese-listed tech names here at the NASDAQ are trading higher. JD.com, Baidu, Weibo as well. The NASDAQ coming off its best year since 2013, the first trading day of the year. And we're looking at Apple opening at a new record high. Apple, of course, was 2019's best performer with an 86% gain. And question this year is the launch of the 5G phone. Will it continue to capitalize on its success in wearables? Microsoft, another big winner on the NASDAQ as well. Want to draw your attention to Tesla at this hour. You guys mentioned it at the top as well. It's planning to deliver its second batch of Chinese-made Model 3 sedans from its new Shanghai factory on the 7th of January. That's according to reports. This is a factory, though, that it built just last year, and it's certainly a sign that its strategy in China is starting to pay off. But the numbers and earnings will tell us the real story. That stock up 1.5%. Guys, back to you.
Seema Modi at the NASDAQ, thank you. We're staying on top of the markets as we see new records in the new year. The Dow, the S&P, and the NASDAQ all hitting fresh record intraday highs this morning. The Dow trading just below 200 points. The S&P is up 0.5%, and the NASDAQ is back above 9,000. Squawk on the street. We'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
Pascal gobbles up the rebound and slams it down.
Catch your favorite NBA team right here on TuneIn.
A step back, deep three is up and in.
Search NBA on TuneIn and hear all the action. The NBA lives on TuneIn.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted.
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow and TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations.
You'll also get live commercial-free news,
plus live play-by-play games from NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Be better informed, be better prepared. The Better Network is on TuneIn. This is Brent Musburger. Search BETR and start hanging out with me and my guys in the desert weekday afternoons. The Better Network is now on TuneIn.
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour, but we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium,
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats.
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now. You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Hello. Welcome back. Stimulus news out of China helping to fuel the markets to record highs. Dow's up 179 or 183 points now. This is President Trump says he will sign the Phase 1 trade deal on January 15th. Eunice Yoon is here at Post 9 with more. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
All right, tell us the latest. It does seem there's already this expectation we're going to get this deal signing, and perhaps most notably in D.C. after all the back and forth on where it would happen, and then this idea that a Phase 2 is going to begin after that?
Yeah, that's the expectation out of the White House. But right now, the Chinese have not yet officially confirmed this, any of the information in President Trump's tweet. And in the state media, there isn't any discussion about it at all. It is, the Chinese style is to be much more cautious. So we have seen them not confirm information, but then it turns out to be true sometimes. And also there is an expectation that if it's not on January 15th, it would be, a signing would happen at some point because the economy is slowing down. Overnight, we had some economic data which disappointed. So this is the Caixin PMI, which measures small and medium-sized manufacturers, engages them, and it was worse than what people had expected, the worst in 3 months. So that data, plus also the messaging out of the leadership, which has been that 2020 is going to be a year when they need to stabilize the economy, is leading to expectations that there will be a signing at some point this month.
What's the conversation been like about the last sentence in the president's tweet the other day of a visit to Beijing, a more formal visit?
There hasn't been any confirmation of that at all. No, not at all. I mean, there's been more discussion about a phase 2. So will there be a phase 2? There's been a lot of fear and concern about a tech war brewing, and so whether or not that's actually going to lead to some discussion, or if it's not going to lead to anything at all. And so that's the part that a lot of people are talking about.
There have been conflicting reports, whatever you want to call it, as to how far we've progressed in the phase 1 language, whether it still needs to be translated, whether it already was translated. That's the Navarro-Mnuchin disconnect in terms of Kayla Tausche's reporting. So to your point, there's still a lot that has to happen before this whole thing gets done.
There is, and there were a lot of people who said, oh, this looks like what was discussed back in May, a while back. There hasn't been a whole lot of progress, so...
We did talk about the sort of easing move overnight in China as well. I mean, how do we think about this in terms of, is it really just a routine providing more liquidity to the markets, or is there a sense of urgency about it?
I think there's both. So we're leading up to the Lunar New Year, and so we usually see liquidity being injected into the markets around this time because there's just such a cash crunch. Even right before I left, a lot of people were talking about the cash crunch. And then the other part of it is that there is concern about the economy. And so this move, plus on January 1st, we had import tariffs. It eased. That's another way in which they could try to stimulate spending in China. And then there's another big political factor that's coming up, why people think 2020 is going to be an important year to stabilize the economy, and that is that in 2021, there is the 100th anniversary of the Communist Party, of the founding. And so President Xi Jinping has said that he wants to make sure that the per capita GDP from 2010 is doubled by next year. So everyone's talking about that means 6% growth for 2020.
When I see a stat like this, Chinese consumer inflation, well, we'll leave that for another day. But so we can talk about China for the next several hours. Anyway, Eunice Yoon, thank you so much for joining us here at Post 9.
On another day of record highs for the markets, Western Digital and AMD leading the S&P higher as you take a look at the board of the leaders. We'll be right back.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Smart sports wagering talk is now on TuneIn. This is Brett Musburger. The Better Network is now on TuneIn. Search BETR. Be better informed. Be better prepared. And remember, cash and tickets is what it's all about.
Pascal gobbles up the rebound and slams it down.
Get your favorite NBA team right here on TuneIn.
A step back deep three is up and in.
Search NBA on TuneIn and hear all the action. The NBA lives on TuneIn.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted.
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today. Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted.
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations.
You'll also get live commercial-free news,
plus live play-by-play games from NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
New year, new decade. Sounds like a perfect time to start anew with a subscription to TuneIn Premium. Skip the ads and listen more in 2020 with commercial-free music and news from MSNBC, CNBC, Fox News Talk, and more. Sports fans, we got you covered too with every NFL, NBA, NHL, and college sports game. Not to mention Major League Baseball come spring training. Don't settle for same this year. Search Premium to upgrade today.
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour, but we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium,
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats.
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
Record highs for the major averages. Dow right now up just shy of 200 points, 2/3 of 1%, but all across the board, another record-setting day for the major averages. Squawk on the Street is back in less than 3 minutes.
Cutting for the net, scores! On the goal line, Marchand scores!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
And tucks it home!
And with this team, it's really fun to be a part of a team like that.
You can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium. From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today. When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Trade up to Schwab, the better place for traders.
Swelling, stiffness. When your hands hurt, you can't function. Until now. Introducing the new Copperfit compression gloves with Sure Grip technology to give you more power, more control, and more agility than ever. Our most advanced copper-infused compression fabric woven into an ultra-lightweight performance glove that fits like a second skin to support relief and recovery of sore muscles and painful joint stiffness. And new Sure Grip bands built in to provide a strong, non-slip grip for more power and control.
You need total control of your hands when you're doing anything with construction. Your hands are your livelihood. The Copperfit gloves are great. The grip is outstanding here with these different ribs. It makes my hand a lot more usable. It just feels like you're just ready to start the job.
The gloves have been a game changer for me. They help with flexibility and pain and soreness. They allow me to do my job even better.
Breathable wicking fabric with an open finger design for full range of motion, feel, and control.
They relieve my pain. When I grab something, I'm not in pain. The support or whatever magic these things do, I don't know what it is. It doesn't matter to me what it is. It works.
I get a lot of pain, and it can make it difficult to do the smallest thing. While I'm wearing this, I do not have any pain. I can use it on the keyboard. I can use my phone. I drive with it. I sleep with it. I love this glove.
The new Copperfit compression gloves with Sure Grip technology. Relief from painful muscle and joint soreness. Guaranteed or your money back. Call 1-800-281-6418. or on the web at getcopperfitgloves.com for only $19.99. Order right now and your shipping is free.
I tried it. I use it. I know it works.
Copperfit gloves definitely just make my life better.
I've used Copperfit before. This has helped my hands so much. These things work.
Feel better with copper-infused compression. Ask for it by name. Copperfit Compression Gloves.
He talked the part, he dressed the part.
A royal imposter lives a princely life on other people's millions.
Everybody was fair game.
The season premiere of American Greed, Monday, 10 Eastern, CNBC. Get yours.
Good Thursday morning. Welcome back to Squawk on the Street. I'm Scott Wapner, along with Morgan Brennan and Mike Santoli. We're live at Post 9 at the New York Stock Exchange. Carl, Sarah, and David have the morning off. Let's take a look at the markets. Record-setting morning here on Wall Street. All three of the major averages setting new milestones today. The Dow was up about 200 points, up just shy of that now. 28,725. NASDAQ's got 9,000 back with a gain of 78 points, nearly 1%. And there's the S&P up 0.5%.
And that is where our roadmap starts today. The first trading day of 2020. Record highs across the board to start the year. But can the rally continue in the months ahead?
Plus, going on the run, an Interpol arrest warrant now out for the ousted Nissan boss. As the chase continues, we have the latest details.
And is vaping going up in smoke? The Trump administration set to announce a ban on flavored e-cigarettes as early as tomorrow.
But we're going to start with those fresh highs. The Dow, S&P, and NASDAQ all touching new records to kick off 2020. So how should investors be positioned in the new year? With us now to discuss today's rally, PIMCO market strategist and portfolio manager Tony Crescenzi, as well as Wells Fargo Asset Management portfolio manager Margie Patel. It's good to have you both with us. Tony, you sat down and you said, it's getting too easy. You just throw money in the market and you make money. Is that how it's going to be this year?
Does seem easy, and assets across the board did well last year. It probably won't be the same this year. When we think of the bond market, which has been chief focus, it's not likely to be the same. Last year was a turnaround year for the bond market after a more difficult and challenging 2018 when the Federal Reserve was raising interest rates. But the key component that drove returns in 2019 probably won't be a main driver this year, which is a decline in interest rates. Interest rates in 2020 are more likely to be stable. Credit spreads, the difference in yield between instruments other than treasuries to treasuries, probably stable too because of the ongoing economic expansion, which probably means that 2020 can be characterized chiefly as a coupon clipping year where neither prices move because of interest rate changes or there'll be meaningful price changes because of credit spread changes. And so, but the main thing, last point, is the risks lean toward one side, which is toward wider credit spreads, not higher interest rates. So if there's risk in the bond market this year, it's toward somewhat widening credit spreads, and who knows what type of event, because there still are numerous uncertainties for this year, political, trade, and also the election that could affect the market.
Forgive me, Margie, for mispronouncing your name in my introduction. I beg your pardon for that. What about your outlook for the market this year? As Tony said, almost every asset class made money in 2019. What's going to be the best investment in 20?
I think stocks will be the best investment in 20, just as they were in 19. I think people are underestimating the positive forces behind the equity market. The first one being that the Fed has changed their game plan. They're no longer meddling in the market, causing uncertainty, and I think that opens the doors for equities to continue to expand on the upside.
Well, Margie, I mean, implicit in that, if the idea that we're still in this one, let's say 2% growth economy, earnings are single digits, if it's going to be a very good year for stocks, that would suggest that we're going to expand valuations and kind of get a little more excitable in terms of investor enthusiasm. Does that seem like a likely scenario?
I think it's a likely scenario, whether stocks go up because of earnings going higher, because of PE's price-earnings ratios expanding, or just a relative shortage of stocks and lack of bad news. That says to me that stocks are likely to continue to surprise on the upside, especially when so much money is positioned as if tomorrow there was going to be a recession. That money is still poised to enter the market, and that's going to keep us from having any deep correction, I think.
Tony, going back to your outlook for the bond market, what does that mean in terms of, or how should investors be positioned within fixed income more broadly, and particularly versus other types of assets?
First of all, don't try to market time the diversification benefits of bonds. Many believe the Federal Reserve this year won't cut interest rates, and that's what the bond market's priced for. So many bond investors will say, well, why am I invested in bonds with yields so low globally? Well, there's something called conditional correlation, that when something bad happens, bonds will be there for you and for your portfolio to benefit the portfolio. Because the key risk for any investor in the entirety of the portfolio is equity risk, that equity prices decline, that the equity risk inherent in certain corporate bonds and other bonds hits those bonds. And so you want to have fixed income simply for the diversification. But all that said, what we would suggest is being liquid, resilient, and agile in terms of portfolio construction. This means going up the value chain, sticking with more high-quality bonds, because bond market's priced for perfection, and there isn't a lot left in terms of yield above treasuries.
Marky, what do you see as the biggest risk to your investment thesis for 2020, given the fact that there are so many uncertainties right now?
Well, I would think the biggest risk would be that some countries, emerging markets, China perhaps, disappoint in their growth prospects. I'm thinking that most countries will slog along and have modestly positive growth rates. But if we had a real correction in one of the major emerging markets, that could roll over a little bit onto our markets. But really, the U.S. market has such strong fundamentals. I think that'll be a pretty immaterial negative force on the equity markets.
And where within the U.S. markets, Margie? I mean, there's been this big debate, obviously, whether it could be continued outperformance of growth or this rotation into value and cyclical stocks continuing that we saw late last year.
Yeah, we saw a lot of catch-up short-term moves at the end of last year in lagging sectors. But I think for this year, we're looking for the growth sector, sustainable growth. So we're still looking at technology, certain parts of industrials, and healthcare to have above-average returns reflecting their better growth.
Tony, does the dollar continue to weaken against other major currencies this year?
We wouldn't look for a lot of movement in the value of the U.S. dollar, chiefly because the stories abroad matter. It's all a relative game in the currency world, and so it probably won't move much. But if there's a risk of the Federal Reserve lowering its policy rate more while other central banks keep their policy rates stable, i.e. the ECB, European Central Bank, and the Bank of Japan, which might weaken the dollar on the margin, but much depends on the relative story. And then, of course, the second half with the election prospects.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for
Tony.
having me.
Margie, to you as well. Happy New Year to you both.
Happy New Year.
Well, this story is turning into a global catch-me-if-you-can caper. New details this morning on Carlos Ghosn's flight from Japan. Lebanon says it has received an international wanted notice from Interpol for Ghosn. Meanwhile, a local Carlos Ghosn says he'll hold a news conference in Beirut on the 8th of this month, so in less than a week. Joining us on the CNBC phone line now is former vice chair of General Motors and a 50-year veteran of the auto industry, Bob Lutz. Bob, thanks for calling in. Good to talk to you this morning.
Hey, good to talk to you.
Bob, you know now Carlos Ghosn for quite a while right now. Obviously, there are elements here of just simply, a global executive caught between jurisdictions and things about the Japanese judicial system and all the rest of it. But what are your observations right here in this situation that Mr. Ghosn finds himself in, and what does it say, if anything, about the machinations behind the scenes in this kind of multi-state car company that he once ran?
We don't know. He claims he's the victim of a conspiracy to oust him. But having known Carlos Ghosn for a number of years and having observed his personality over the decades and seeing him become more and more imperious and clearly suffering from CEO disease, where he showed all the signs of believing himself to be omnipotent and infallible. That type of personality does tend to pretty easily slip over the line and do things that the rest of us would not do, because they think they're so important and so well connected and of such vast importance to the economy that nobody would ever call them on it. And I've observed this a number of times in my career, that these people who receive but adulation from the media and from inside their own company never receive any negative feedback. They tend to develop this God complex and believe that they are above the law to some extent. So I'm not saying he's guilty as charged, but I am saying I know the profile. I've seen it many, many times before. And I would be extremely surprised if this was the result of a carefully planned conspiracy and he was, in fact, totally innocent. It's possible, but personally, I don't believe it.
That's a pretty searing character indictment, if I must say, Bob. Don't you think? I mean, you've basically said everything but he's guilty.
Well, I say that he was a control freak, needed to amass enormous power. And, being an effective CEO of 3 or 4 car companies at the same time, since we all, no matter how great we are, we only have 24 hours a day, some of which is devoted to sleep, it's impossible to really exercise those duties in a good way without really delegating most of it. Now, what most people would do is they put themselves on the board, or they make an arrangement to where they effectively, help run the other company. But declaring yourself CEO of all these companies simultaneously, it just does not make any sense. And a lot of his personal mannerisms, when I don't know if you ever saw the movie Revenge of the Electric Car, which is quite a segment on Carlos Ghosn internally in meetings, and his whole mannerisms, his way of walking into a meeting room with his entourage and everything, it's more like a head of state than a CEO. And to me, these are just bad signs. They're just signs of someone who takes themselves more seriously than they should. And again, it's not a personal, and it's not necessarily negative. I'm just saying that he exhibited traits of someone who takes himself too seriously.
Bob, to your point, I mean, there have been serious ramifications as well to the companies from which he was ousted. I mean, Renault and Nissan, 2 of the very worst performing car stocks in 2019. We've certainly seen all these cracks emerge around the alliance. What happens, especially as all of this continues to unfold around Ghosn personally, what happens to that alliance, and what happens to these different manufacturers and potential tie-ups now as we head into another year?
Well, as you know, Nissan is experiencing a goodly number of difficulties, because what happens when you have a hardline dictatorial CEO, people start making up numbers and hiding the facts. And since he always mandated market share, he told Nissan America, you will attain a market share of, I don't know what it was, 11% or 12%. And they couldn't do it. So what they do is they discount the heck out of things and start going into profitless prosperity, where they're putting cars into daily rental and cheap leases and everything to get the numbers. And the minute Carlos was gone, the ugly truth of what Nissan was really like emerged, because people started telling the truth. So the alliance was never great. And I will tell you, an alliance, somebody has to explain this alliance business to me, because he also came to General Motors at one point and suggested that we join in. And our reply was, well, how does it work? We can understand a merger. We can understand a joint company. We can understand rules on how you divide up investments and how you divide profits. But in an alliance, how does it work? And he said, well, you just have to trust it, and everybody takes care of each other, and it's for the mutual good. But an alliance is not a formal type of business arrangement where you have hard and fast rules on who does what, who shares what, and who benefits how. So, General Motors, even though we had serious financial problems at the time, we elected to pass on that one. And, of course, Carlos Ghosn was, in addition to being CEO of Renault and CEO of Nissan and CEO of, I don't know whether Mitsubishi was in it at the time, he was going to be CEO of General Motors as well. Well, that never would have worked.
But that awkward arrangement that you're talking about seems to also reflect some realities about the global car business, with overcapacity and a lot of nations wanting to cling to the idea that they have these manufacturers they don't want to let fall into a twilight period, right? I mean, and that seems to be in part perhaps the backdrop for why Carlos Ghosn came perhaps under greater attention by the Japanese authorities. At least that would be his side of things. They just didn't like how the company, the alliance, was being run.
Well, as I say, that's all very possible. It's quite possible that once he holds his press conference and the evil conspiracy is revealed, he'll be cleared of all charges, and the Japanese judicial system will get the bad reputation that it richly deserves, and so forth. That's all possible. But again, it would surprise me greatly if there were no basis whatsoever for those allegations. But your point about the global industry, it is true that every country likes to maintain its automobile industry. And the reason for that is the automobile industry is so fundamental. It's huge amounts of capital, gigantic employment, and then there's the knock-on employment in the Tier 1 suppliers, Tier 2, Tier 3, and finally the mom-and-pop shops that put nuts and bolts together. And then you've got all the dealerships. I mean, in the States, we used to say 1 out of every 7 working Americans is in some way dependent on the automobile industry. Today, I understand it's something more like 1 in 10. But an automobile business is still a powerful driver of an economy. And if you look at glass, most glass doesn't go into building; it goes into cars. Number one destination for carpets is not homes; it's cars, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, almost any commodity you look at, number one utilization is motor vehicles. So a lot of governments realize that, and they make the car industry a priority.
Yeah, without a doubt. Bob, I really appreciate your time this morning. Thank you very much.
Sorry it wasn't live. I mean, sorry it wasn't on camera.
Next time. Appreciate it. Thanks, Bob.
Still to come, the race for the White House. Senator Bernie Sanders reporting a blowout fourth quarter in his latest fundraising efforts. We have those details ahead, and we are all over this market rally on the first day of trading in 2020. After the major averages all hit fresh record highs, giving up some of those gains now as the morning unfolds. We got a big show still ahead. Don't go anywhere.
Whatever happens out there today, remember.
Cutting for the hit, scores! On the goal line, Marshawn scores!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
And tucks it home!
And with this team, it's really fun to be a part of a team like that.
You can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium, from regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour, but we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? We've got you covered. With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to every NFL game live as it's happening.
LaShawn McCoy has an opening on the right side, punches into the end zone for the touchdown.
Or catch it later on demand.
Offset backs behind Mahomes. The give is to Williams. Starts right, cuts it back to the left, and blows into the end zone for the touchdown.
You call the plays. Follow the NFL anytime, anywhere, all season long with TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
Welcome back. The race for the White House is heating up as presidential hopefuls report their latest fundraising numbers. Our Eamon Jabbers is down in D.C. with the latest. Hey, Eamon.
Yeah, good morning, Morgan.
Happy New Year. It is officially a presidential election year, and that means we're starting to get our first look at how some of those presidential candidates did in terms of their fourth quarter 2019 presidential fundraising, including a big number, as you mentioned, from Bernie Sanders. Take a look at what we're calling the feel the burn rate for Bernie Sanders and how he did it. He raised, he says, more than $34.5 million in the fourth quarter of 2019 from 1.2 million individual donors with an average donation, they say, of $18.53. Bernie Sanders here effectively crowdsourcing this presidential campaign in terms of online fundraising. On December 31st, they say the campaign received money from 40,000 new donors just on that day. Total, they say, they've got more than 5 million individual donors. The most common donors for the Sanders campaign, pretty standard for what you'd see across all the Democratic campaigns. Teachers, Amazon and Walmart employees, and Starbucks baristas all at the top of the list. So where does Bernie Sanders rank in terms of the other campaigns? Well, Donald Trump crushed his number with $46 million in fundraising. There you see Sanders at 34.5, Buttigieg at 24.7, and Yang, surprising to a lot of people for somebody who has not been a presidential candidate for very long, not had a history of political involvement, $16.5 million raised by the Yang campaign. We don't have numbers, Morgan, here from all of the campaigns yet for that fourth quarter. We should be getting them over the coming weeks, so we don't know about Biden or Warren or some of these others yet. Traditionally, though, the campaigns that have done the best put their numbers out early. The campaigns that have done the worst wait to disclose them until the last possible second. So this might give you a sense of which campaigns feel like they did a really good job in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and certainly we'll be looking for more of those numbers as well, Eamon. Is there seasonality when it comes to political fundraising as well, or no?
Yeah, there definitely is, and as you get closer to the election, of course, you get a lot more interest as you go along, so it sort of builds steadily. But you're also seeing individual inflection points. The Trump campaign, for example, said that the impeachment effort by Democrats in the House really drove a lot of intensity among the Trump supporters and Trump base. And so when you get people fired up and you get that intensity around those particular news headlines, that's when people sort of mash that button online and say, I'm going to give to that campaign. And that's driving a lot of the fundraising for the Trump campaign.
Yeah, obviously a lot of heat in the debate makes that maybe outreach a little more urgent. Right. Eamon, thank you very much. We'll talk to you again soon. As we head to a break, look at shares of Tesla trading higher after getting a bit of a boost over at Canaccord, the firm taking its price target up to $515. That is the highest on the street. You see Tesla up 1.6% this morning. A lot more squawk on the street is still ahead.
Through the AT&T network,
at TUI, we're spreading sunshine early by giving away hundreds of thousands of free kids' places. So you can holiday with the little ones for less. Book today and spread the cost with £0 deposit when you pay with direct debit. From splash parks to swimming lessons. At TUI, we cross the T's, dot the I's, and put you in the middle. Direct debit on web bookings only. Free kids' places subject to limited availability. One free child place per 2 full paying adults. Booking T's and C's apply. At all protected.
Pascal gobbles up the rebound and slams it down.
Get your favorite NBA team right here on TuneIn.
A step back, deep three is up and in.
Search NBA on TuneIn and hear all the action. The NBA lives on TuneIn.
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour, but we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
You might already know that TuneIn allows you to listen to all the pro sports leagues wherever you go. But did you know TuneIn is also home to the wide world of college sports?
Open three, DeAndre Hunter got
Hand off Carruthers. Big hole right side. He leaps and he surges in. Touchdown.
From live college football, basketball, and baseball games to podcasts and coaches shows fueling your love for the game in your school. And the best part is, it's all free. Search college sports to find your team or league. Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted.
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today.
The Trump administration set to announce a ban on flavored e-cigarette cartridges as early as tomorrow. Our Meg Terrell joins us now with the very latest. Meg?
Hey, Scott. Well, almost 4 months after HHS Secretary Alex Azar promised a flavor ban on e-cigarettes, reports are we'll see it tomorrow, but it's not the blanket ban initially announced. The FDA is likely to ban all flavors of e-cigarettes except menthol and tobacco, a step back from the initial plan to include menthol. The ban also only applies to cartridge-based systems like Juuls, not to open-tank systems like those sold in vape shops. The move comes after pro-vaping groups warned a blanket ban would affect jobs in the vaping industry and that it would influence voting in swing states. So how much does this actually change? Well, already Juul, the market leader, has pulled fruity and mint flavors from the market in the face of criticism that it's driven the youth epidemic in vaping. Former FDA Commissioner Dr. Scott Gottlieb joined Squawk Box this morning and noted that the ban could have an unintended consequence.
The restrictions on the flavors that they put in place basically just freezes the market as it is. It's a real boon to Juul because it forces Juul's competitors to now conform to what Juul already did. So this helps Juul quite a bit. They'll gain market share as a result of this policy.
Still, all of this is essentially a temporary move ahead of a May deadline by which time all manufacturers of e-cigarettes have to file for approval to keep their products on the market. The requirements for doing so? Proving a net public health benefit, weighing their use as a tool to quit smoking versus their history of drawing kids into addiction of nicotine. Guys?
Meg Terrell, thank you. When we return, is a recession ahead in 2020? The biggest risks to the rally. That's next. Stay with us.
Had the same job for the last 15 years. Working with the same people, in the same office, drinking tea from the same comedy mug, eating the same crayfish and rocket sandwich every lunchtime, using the same business jargon, and climbing the same greasy pole. What does that even mean? Then maybe it's time to switch it up, starting with the all-new Vauxhall Corsa. With its bold styling and up to 70 miles per gallon. To switch it up, visit your local Vauxhall dealership or search New Corsa. Official WLTP test figures for comparison purposes only. Real-world figures may vary.
Smart Sports Wagering Talk is now on TuneIn. This is Brett Musburger. The Better Network is now on TuneIn. Search BETR. Be better informed. Be better prepared. And remember, cash and tickets is what it's all about.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations. You'll also get live commercial-free news, plus live play-by-play games from NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Cutting for the net, scores! On the goal line, Marshawn scores!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
And tucks it home!
And with this team, it's really fun to be a part of a team like that.
And you can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium. From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Sue Herrera. Here's your CNBC News Update at this hour. Former Obama Housing Secretary Julian Castro has dropped out of the Democratic presidential race. It comes as he failed to garner enough support or donations to make the recent presidential debates. Castro, the only Latino candidate in the field, languished at about 1% in the polls. Taiwan says the country's top military official was killed in an Air Force helicopter crash, which also killed 7 others. 5 people survived the crash in the mountains outside of the capital. As chief of the general staff, Shen Yiming was responsible for overseeing Taiwan's defense against China. Indonesia says severe flooding has killed at least 16 people, displacing tens of thousands and forcing an airport to close. Monsoon rains and overflowing rivers caused buildings to collapse, and more than 31,000 people were put into temporary shelters. Back here at home, New York Yankees pitcher Don Larson has died. He was the only pitcher to throw a perfect game in the World Series. He accomplished the feat against the Brooklyn Dodgers in 1956. He died of esophageal cancer. Don Larson was 90 years old. You are up to date. That's the news update this hour. Scott, I'll send it back downtown to you.
All right, we appreciate that, Sue. Thank you. Fresh record highs for all of the major indices to kick off trading in 2020. But is a recession ahead? It is the question our next guest asks in his latest op-ed for the Wall Street Journal. Renowned economist and author of A Random Walk Down Wall Street, Bert Malkiel, joins us now. Bert, welcome. It's nice to see you, and Happy New Year.
Thank you. Happy New Year to you.
Thank you very much. CEOs are certainly thinking about the prospects of a recession. According to the Conference Board, it's now the #1 risk and their fear going into 2020. Is that justified? Should they be concerned about one this year?
Well, the, quote, reliable leading indicators don't seem to be very worrisome now. But again, I think it's just very, very difficult to predict recessions. Even the reliable indicators that often precede recessions, even those, while they're right more often than they're wrong, they're often predict recessions that don't happen. You know, it used to be a wonderful quip by Paul Samuelson that the stock market, which is a great advance indicator of recessions, has predicted 9 of the last 5 recessions. So I think for don't try it at home. It's really very, very difficult to do. And I think you're going to get yourself in more trouble than not if you try to do it. Let me give you an example. In the middle of last year, I remember many people coming on CNBC saying, oh my God, the yield curve has inverted. That's a very reliable predictor of recession. Sell your stocks, be wary of recession. And then what happened? If you had sold your stocks in the middle of the year, you would have lost one of the strongest last half of the year rallies we've ever had. So don't try it at home. That's my advice.
Well, how do you assess the economy in the here and now? You know, the manufacturing, it's a tale of two economies. Manufacturing has been weak. The consumer has been carrying the load for the economy. How much longer can that maintain itself?
Look, for a long time, we've had an economy that has had a greater and greater share in the service sector and a smaller share in the manufacturing sector. So I think that is going to continue. I don't see particular warning signs now, but again, you never know. My guess is if we have a recession, what's going to cause it is some shock that we don't know of now, some international shock, a resumption of the trade war. It's going to be something like that, not something that we can see in the immediate future.
So, Bert, it begs the question, going back to this idea of don't try it at home in terms of, calling a potential recession. And certainly we've seen a number of economists come on and try and do this and then end up with egg on their face. People keep doing it because they want to make sure that they're able to position their portfolios accordingly. How should they be thinking about that?
I think that what one ought to do is to rebalance from time to time. Look, suppose you were comfortable having 75% stocks and 25% in safer, more fixed income types of assets. And suppose you look at your portfolio now in January And because the stock market has been so particularly strong that you're now 80% in stocks, and that's a little bit more risky than you're comfortable with, then okay, take the 5% off, take a few profits, and put them into safer assets. From time to time, rebalance. That has proved to be something that always will keep your risk within the tolerances where you're comfortable. And if you do have volatile markets, that kind of rebalancing can actually improve your overall returns.
Bert, just
so
bigger
rebalance,
picture,
but don't try it.
Just was going to ask
Go
you
ahead.
here, just when you wrote A Random Walk Down Wall Street 45, more than that years ago, it was a complete maverick idea. Don't try to beat the market, keep costs low, essentially passive indexing might be the best way to do it. Do you feel now as if that lesson has been fully absorbed? I mean, obviously the flows have been going in that way. So is it mission accomplished from your perspective?
Oh, I think there's no question that this is caught on. When my book was first reviewed by a professional in Business Week, they said it was the biggest piece of garbage in the world. Ridiculous advice. Well, now in mutual funds, the index share is now more than 50%, and the active share is less. Standard & Poor's does something called a SPIVA report each year. Each year you find that at least 2/3 of active managers are beaten by the index, and the third that win one year don't win in the next year, so that when you compound this over 15 years, it's more than 90% don't beat the index. So I think, frankly, it has been proven, it does work, and frankly, I think there's even too little indexing now. There ought to be even more indexing. It works. It's the best thing for individual investors to do for the core of their portfolio.
Bert, I think that's a perfect last word. We wish you well. Happy New Year once again, and we will talk to you again soon.
Happy New Year to you and to all investors. Thank you.
Well, millions of Americans kicking off the new year with a pay raise. This is a number of states and cities hike their minimum wage. Seattle now among the country's highest wage cities, phasing in a $15 an hour minimum for all employers by the year 2021. But so far, the pros and cons aren't so clear cut. Kate Rogers went to Seattle to find out more.
At Dick's Drive-In, the average employee is in their 20s and turnover is low. Thanks to investments the company makes in workers, like offering paid time off and 401ks, as well as 100% employer-paid health insurance. The benefits are available to workers regardless of the number of hours they've worked.
We invest a lot in our employees. We expect a lot for them, but we invest a lot for them.
The company already pays above minimum wage, with its Seattle location starting at $17 and $18 an hour. But as wages increased at restaurants across the city over the last few years, labor costs also rose at Dick's. In fact, the company had to raise its prices for the first time in its history based on labor costs alone. In the past, food costs had been the driving factor for price hikes. As workers took home more in their paychecks, President Jasmine Donovan said an interesting trend emerged.
Our employees are voluntarily choosing fewer hours at the higher wage rate, which means I have more employees working part-time hours than I used to. And it also is harder to get people to pick up hours when people are sick or need to change their schedule for school or family reasons.
Seattle's economy has been growing for years. Since 2015, the number of restaurants is up 5%, with annual sales increasing 20% over the same period. And in that time, Seattle's job growth has outpaced the state of Washington as a whole, but growth in weekly hours was slightly lower than the state's average. The city's population has increased by 13%, but so too has homelessness by 11%. For some, the economy has taken off in a way that feels unsustainable. Matthew Dillon, James Beard Award-winning chef and owner of Sitka and Spruce, closed his doors as the year ended. While labor costs played into the decision, as he pays above the minimum wage, so too did his rent, which is nearly $16,000 per month, including taxes and fees, and his ability to pass on costs to customers. When his lease came up, he said he decided it was time to move on.
The wages are going up at this level. The prices of food is going up. My property taxes that I have to pay for the landlord are going up. My rent is going up. My staff or staff that was here that feels like, well, I can't be in the city anymore, so I need to move on. So you have to find someone to replace me, and that's really hard. So the cost of that, just working through that as a business owner, is going up.
Kate Rogers joins us now with more. Kate, great reporting, and given the fact that you do cover the restaurant industry so much and so deeply in general, I think it begs the question, as we start to see more of these minimum wages go up, maybe that's good for the employees, more money in their pocket, but the flip side is we're seeing more and more companies adopt more and more automation as well.
That's definitely something that I think we will continue to see as we move forward and as more and more of these higher wages go into effect around the country. But what I found was really interesting in reporting this is that a lot of the situations that kind of unfolded were really nuanced. Even though people may have had more money to spend on the ground in Seattle, the local burger establishment we spoke to said that customers were not happy about price hikes and they weren't necessarily spending more money. The higher end restaurant that we spoke to said that customers don't necessarily want to pay $25 for a salad. So there's different challenges that you can't quite map out when this is going into effect. But on the flip side, we talked to workers who had their lives really changed by these big wage increases that allowed them to live more comfortably. And, they said it made them feel better when doing their jobs because they were making more money to do the same work.
Yeah, Kate, and more of those increases working their way through the system after the first of the year. Thank you very much for all that,
Thanks.
Kate Rogers. When we come back, new year, new laws. Recreational marijuana sales now underway in Illinois. We'll speak with the owner of one Chicago-based cannabis company next. Walk on the Street returns in 2 minutes.
At Southern New Hampshire University.
Hello, I'm here at the Race for Life 5K, joined by Jackie Clark. Jackie, what would first place today mean to you?
I think you've got the wrong race, love. This is Race for Life. This is about beating cancer, not getting a gold medal.
And how did you train for this event?
I just turned up. It's a walk in the park, literally. Why aren't you doing it? Trainers on, let's go.
We're not athletes, we're cancer beaters. Sign up to Race for Life now and get 30% off entry until the 31st of January in partnership with Tesco.
New year, new decade. Sounds like a perfect time to start anew with a subscription to TuneIn Premium. Skip the ads and listen more in 2020 with commercial-free music and news from MSNBC, CNBC, Fox News Talk, and more. Sports fans, we got you covered too with every NFL, NBA, NHL, and college sports game. Not to mention Major League Baseball come spring training. Don't settle for same this year. Search Premium to upgrade today. New year, new decade. Sounds like a perfect time to start anew with a subscription to TuneIn Premium. Skip the ads and listen more in 2020 with commercial-free music and news from MSNBC, CNBC, Fox News Talk, and more. Sports fans, we got you covered too with every NFL, NBA, NHL, and college sports game. Not to mention Major League Baseball come spring training. Don't settle for the same this year. Search Premium to upgrade today. New year, new decade. Sounds like a perfect time to start anew with a subscription to TuneIn Premium. Skip the ads and listen more in 2020 with commercial-free music and news from MSNBC, CNBC, Fox News Talk, and more. Sports fans, we got you covered too with every NFL, NBA, NHL, and college sports game. Not to mention Major League Baseball come spring training. Don't settle for the same this year. Search Premium to upgrade today. Don't settle for same this year. Search Premium to upgrade today.
Forming last year, but traders agree one is the best bet in 2020. Find out which on tradingnation.cnbc.com. More Squawk on the Street is coming up.
Okay.
You might already know that TuneIn allows you to listen to all the pro sports leagues wherever you go. But did you know TuneIn is also home to the wide world of college sports?
Open three, DeAndre Hunter got it! Handoff Carruthers, big hole right side. He leaps and he surges in. Touchdown!
From live college football, basketball, and baseball games to podcasts and coaches shows fueling your love for the game in your school. And the best part is, it's all free. Search college sports to find your team or league.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Welcome back. 2019 proved to be a brutal year for cannabis investors, but is a turnaround on track for 2020? This as Illinois joins 10 other states and the District of Columbia in allowing the legal sale of recreational marijuana, and more states prepare to put pot on the ballot. Joining us now to discuss is Green Thumb Industries CEO and Chairman Ben Kovler. Ben, thanks for joining us today.
Hello, thank you for having me.
So your company is headquartered in Chicago, where we did see the legalization of recreational use cannabis to kick off the new year. How have sales been so far? What has been, the reaction on the ground?
Sales have been robust. The reaction on the ground is people are interested in this product. I've been saying for a long time, there is a tidal wave of demand. This is a brand new multi-billion-dollar consumer products industry that is being born in front of our eyes in the United States today.
Yeah, I mean, the devil's in the details, though, in terms of legalization, right? Part of the reason that we saw such a rough 2019 for cannabis stocks is because many of those names that were exposed to Canada, as that country more broadly legalized recreational use cannabis, felt the impact of bottlenecks, regulatory red tape, and unexpected consequences there. How much is Canada and the legalization there a case study in not only what to do, but what not to do as more states adopt these measures themselves?
Yeah, it's an excellent point. The industry and the business in Canada and the companies that trade publicly that have exposure to Canada are totally different than the United States opportunity. So being an operator like Green Thumb that operates in the U.S., we have to list in Canada. So Canada is a good lesson for us to watch on some regulatory hurdles and things, but the opportunity is in the United States. There are 350 million Americans. The consumer is interested in this product. It's a broad range of demographics, what we saw yesterday. And so I think you'll see the United States be the leader in world cannabis. You're starting to see market caps creep up and be higher than those in Canada. And frankly, the industry in the United States is so much bigger than Canada. The size in Illinois is bigger than the country in Canada at this time.
Wow, just to put that one in perspective, do you think 2020 is going to be the year we see changes on a federal level in terms of cannabis laws?
I think slowly but surely. You're starting to see momentum around the SAFE Act and clarity around banking and handling of cash, insurance, 401k, and slowly you'll see capital markets and the ability for U.S. companies like us to list in the United States. Whether it's 2020 or 2021, I'm not positive. We've got our head down, focused on executing the business here, and we're excited about what's to come.
So on a state level then, where do you see the biggest opportunities?
The biggest opportunity for Green Thumb right now is in Illinois. You have 13 million people where adult use legalization just occurred overnight. The current industry is going to go up 5 to 10 times. It's going to be a $2 to $3 billion industry with only a handful and a small number of operators with the kind of capacity and the kind of capital and the kind of experience in order to execute this. In addition to Illinois, everywhere east of the Mississippi is a massive opportunity as the world wakes up to cannabis. So that's Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, massive opportunities.
Ben, if you project out a number of years, let's assume you do get this wave of decriminalization, recreational use, legalization, et cetera. What does this industry look like? Because we have a lot of legal products out there and of all sorts that people consume, and the producers of them are not necessarily terribly exciting or fast-growing businesses. So where does it get to at a state of maturity?
So we think the U.S. cannabis opportunity is a $50 to $80 billion space. That's bigger than wine or spirits. And we think over time that's going to grow. Right now it's doing over $1 billion of legal cannabis sales in the United States a month. So currently run rate is about $15 billion. We think that doubles in 2 to 3 years. this is growing at 20 to 30%. And you're going to start to see, you've already seen interest from alcohol, tobacco, food and beverage companies that want to be in the space and have exposure to consumer products that they're already making.
All right, Ben, thank you for joining us.
All right, thank you for having me.
All right, let's send it over now to John Fort with a look at what's coming up on Squawk Alley in just a few minutes. John.
Morning, Scott. Well, place your bets. The year has begun. The decade has begun. What happens with tech after last year's boom? We're going to take a close look at internet and semiconductors, among others, coming up on Squawk Alley.
Hello, I'm here at the Race for Life 5K, joined by Jackie Clark. Jackie, what would first place today mean to you?
I think you've got the wrong race, love. This is Race for Life. This is about beating cancer, not getting a gold medal.
And how did you train for this event?
I just turned up. It's a walk in the park, literally. Why aren't you doing it? Trainers on, let's go.
We're not athletes, we're cancer beaters. Sign up to Race for Life now and get 30% off entry until the 31st of January in partnership with Tesco.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Introducing a new podcast, ESPN Daily. When you want to go beyond your feed, when you want to get inside the score, when you want to get behind the highlight, there's ESPN Daily. Go deeper into the stories of the moment. Get the exclusive access and insider perspective that only ESPN can give you. ESPN Daily, hosted by me, Mina Kimes. Listen now to ESPN Daily on TuneIn.
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour, but we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Cutting for the net, scores! Along the goal line, Marchand scores!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
And tucks it home!
And with this team, it's really fun to be a part of a team like that.
You can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium. From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
Okay, ready to ring in the new year?
New Year's is a time of new beginnings, new opportunities, and fresh chances to get it right. Happy New Year from TuneIn.
Happy New Year.
Getting some new developments now on the Carlos Ghosn mystery. Our Phil LeBeau has the very latest. Phil?
Scott, we have a new statement from Carlos Ghosn regarding the speculation about how exactly he was able to get out of Japan and is now in Beirut. The statement from Mr. Ghosn says, there has been speculation in the media that my wife Carol and other members of my family played a role in my departure from Japan. All such speculation is inaccurate and false. I alone arranged for my departure. My family had no role whatsoever. Again, that statement coming from Carlos Ghosn within the last 10 minutes. So, guys, it's him saying, it's not true. Nobody helped me. I was the one who arranged for me to get out of Japan. But we still don't know the details exactly how that was put together, who helped him. All of the details, that remains very much speculation. And look, if you want a fun game, go on the internet and look for theories about how he got out of the country. I mean, they're all over the place, but very few true details that have been nailed down and proven as factual.
Phil, did you happen to hear what Bob Lutz said about Carlos Ghosn in the last half hour of our show? What do you make of that? I mean, no love lost clearly between the two. And there was, some really harsh things said about Mr. Ghosn's character.
Right. Not surprised. Look, Bob and Carlos Ghosn are in many ways very similar in terms of the level of self-confidence they have as executives. And that's part of what made them so attractive for people who would cover them and for people who worked with them. So I wasn't surprised to hear Bob say what he said about Carlos Ghosn. And look, there were a lot of people, not just within General Motors, but at other automakers as well, who felt that Carlos Ghosn had, this idea that he was it. He was the bomb, and he knew all when it came to the auto industry. And I think a lot of people within the big three were offended by that. They felt like, look, okay, you've done some nice things here with Nissan Renault. Doesn't mean that you are the end-all, be-all when it comes to the auto industry. So yeah. I'm not surprised by the comments from Bob Lutz.
Just to make sure that everybody knows what we're talking about, he said, among other things, quote, that Carlos Ghosn was, quote, clearly suffering from CEO disease, that he showed all the signs of believing himself to be omnipotent and infallible. It's just interesting to hear another executive of Mr. Lutz's, caliber say that kind of thing about Carlos Ghosn at the particular time, with so many unanswered questions yet about what happens with the case against Mr. Ghosn.
That's the candor from Bob Lutz that people love. He will say stuff that maybe executives might say to you in private. And believe me, there are executives who have said that stuff about Bob Lutz. That, he has a godlike complex and he knows all in the auto industry. And I bet you Bob would be the first one to say, sure, I'm sure there are people who have said that. The difference here, Scott, is that he's not afraid to say it. And he said it to you within the last hour.
So, Phil, given the fact that we are expecting this press conference sometime next week from Ghosn, especially now with a statement like this about his family's involvement, or I should say lack of involvement in his fleeing and the way that went down, would you expect that we're going to get more details from him as he looks to clarify the record?
Nope. I don't think you get any more details from him or his rep. Here's the reason why. Because whoever helped him in getting out of Japan, they broke Japanese law. Now, you can make an argument, look, he was being held there. He didn't have representation to talk with his family. It was ridiculous, the conditions that he was under. Having said that, whoever helped him, and he probably had help from within Japan in some fashion, whoever helped him broke the law in Japan. And I can guarantee you that Carlos Ghosn is not somebody who's going to give it up. He is not going to say, well, look, it was this person, and this person, and they did X, Y, and Z. Because he understands, the serious nature of what happened.
Yeah.
Plus the person or people who helped him left with him and are no longer in Japan. Right. So we'll see.
All right. Phil LeBeau, thank you for bringing us the latest on this situation. When we come back, the top 10 internet surprises of 2020. RBC's Mark Mahaney joins us with his predictions. Next, Squawk Alley is just moments away.
This bookcase just arrived, and I need it assembled.
Ah, finally another commercial, said no one ever. Visit tunein.com/premium to upgrade now and get over 45 commercial-free music stations.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? We got you covered. With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to every NFL game live as it's happening.
LaShawn McCoy has an opening on the right side, punches into the end zone for the touchdown.
Or catch it later on demand.
Offset backs behind Mahomes. The give is to Williams. Starts right, cuts it back to the left, and blows into the end zone for the touchdown.
You call the plays. Follow the NFL anytime, anywhere, all season long with TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
Hello, I'm Nat Coombs from ESPN's The Nat Coombs Show, which admittedly is 1 out of 10 for original podcast name, but 10 out of 10 for NFL chat. Every week, we're dropping 4 episodes with an all-pro lineup of terrific guests, journalists, comedians, players, coaches, you name it, all getting you up to speed with everything gridiron. The Nat Coombs Show, American football, British accent. Add to your favorites and listen on TuneIn.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
Are you curious what others are listening to on TuneIn? Head to the trending section under Browse to see the most popular stations and podcasts among TuneIn listeners right now. Check it out. You might just discover something new for yourself.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted!
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown to Keenan.
Search NFL today.
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour, but we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
Good morning. It is 8 a.m. at Google headquarters in Mountain View, California. 11 a.m. here on Wall Street. Squawk Alley is live. Thursday morning. Happy New Year and welcome to Squawk Alley. I am John Fort with Morgan Brennan and Mike Santoli live from here at Post 9 at the New York Stock Exchange. Carl has the morning off. And it is the first trading day of the month and the year. And stocks are rallying to kick off 2020. Fresh record highs for all the major indices. And Bob Pisani is with us here to break down what could push the markets higher or not.
What a difference January 2nd makes. Remember this time last year? A year. What a difference. January 1st of last year, look what's going on. The market was pricing in an earnings recession. Remember that phrase, earnings recession? That stocks were really cheap. Fast forward 1 year. The opposite is happening. The recession didn't happen. The earnings recession certainly didn't happen. The economy is strong. But stocks have gotten a little bit on the expensive side. So the issue is whether we can finally return to earnings growth after an essentially flat year in 2019. Most strategists are expecting mid-single-digit earnings growth, which would take some pressure off the high multiple the market has right now. Early reports from companies reporting at the end of November are mixed, with big names like FedEx, Nike, Micron, General Mills, and Carnival seeing first quarter earnings reduced by analysts. A few others like AutoZone and Costco have seen their earnings estimates increased by analysts. Overall, I'd say the trend is a little bit lower than expected. Looking at risks in 2020, the markets are at new highs because many believe the risk from trade and tariffs is lower. So there's a lower risk. The risk from the Fed, many believe, is also lower as they will likely remain neutral. Decent job growth, the risk from the U.S. consumer, also a bit lower. But there's some risks out there. Moderate risk, a lot of people bring up buybacks. We've been buying back stock for 10 years with a lot of companies, but a lot of people feel there may be a limit to how far we can go with that. The belief that global growth is bottoming and turning around is very high risk. Many believe it's unlikely 2019 is going to be this bottom in the global economy that's been a big driver of the stock market. Nothing's really changed in Europe, for example, and there's very few structural reforms there. Another issue that shows up a lot among strategists in the last week is wage growth concerns. Many believe wages will likely be higher in the years to come, putting some pressure on margins. Now, you guys know that the stock market is a game of expectations. The thing that happened last year is we had very low expectations starting the year. Prices were lower, but now it's the opposite. We have high prices, high multiple, so the expectations are really high. And Mike, you know it's always better to have lower expectations than higher expectations. That's the thing that concerns me the most right now.
Yeah. So what's an investor to do with all of that? Let's talk about it. Bob, stick around. Let's also bring in Jason Helfstein of Oppenheimer. Jason, for example, if we look at 2019, Alphabet was up 28%, still did not outperform the S&P. So coming out of a year like that, you still have outperform ratings on Netflix, Alphabet, Uber, Facebook. Given that the bar is so high, what's going to underperform?
Sure. So, I mean, there's a ranking, right? I mean, we think certain stocks will do better than others. Like within that list, we actually would rank Uber as having the most upside, about 50% to our price target, followed by Netflix at 19, Google at 14, Facebook at 12, and then only 10% upside for Amazon. So, but to answer your Alphabet Google question specifically, you have a catalyst. You have a story there, which is you have Sundar becoming CEO of both Alphabet and Google, and we think that'll take the pressure off kind of the other bets investments and then allow them to take more cash for buybacks. Expectation is they'll have $120 billion of net cash, and they just don't need that much. And so we think for that name specifically, you do have a catalyst for 2020.
Mike Santolia, Apple's market cap is now $1 trillion plus a Disney and enough change to throw in, say, a Workday. And so how does an investor, in a way, avoid that? Not to say that Apple's going to do badly, but it's heavily weighted in the S&P, NASDAQ 100. What are people saying about how you limit your exposure to names like that?
I mean, I think implicitly what the market has decided is not so much that it's exactly those sum of the parts, but that the massive profit base of Apple, it had been the most profitable company in the world, is going to last for longer than we thought a year ago. Honestly, I think it's about the duration of it and not so much about, hey, there's going to be lots of new cool stuff that Apple's going to deliver. But be aware, I think, that people have been buying Apple aggressively for all sorts of reasons that have nothing to do with what's going on at the company. As you said, biggest part of all the indexes. It's happened to be the biggest component of the S&P value index, despite the fact of where it's valued right now. So that might change as they rebalance, but that's a good indication of how you have a lot of people who are kind of just chasing it. Now it's a momentum stock. And very high quality name too, and I think quality and balance sheet have been two things that have worked.
But the earnings keep expanding to deal with the multiple, so we're not dealing with a stupidly overpriced or overhyped multiple at this point for Apple. One reason it still stays in the value camp, essentially.
Well, it's still, but now it's a premium to the S&P, so we'll see if it can still qualify on that basis.
Yeah, Bob, to that point, I mean, this whole idea of value versus growth, we thought we were seeing maybe a rotation in the second half of last year. But then if you look at, again, what has continued to outperform, it is those tech stocks. It is some of those growth names. Is there any reason to think that doesn't change again?
Well, I'm not entirely in that camp. Value did do very well last year. Remember, bank stocks were value stocks in the middle of the year, and beginning in October, they really took off. When we saw yields finally showing signs of bottoming, the curve steepened a little bit. The Fed did do a little bit of liquidity adding. Don't call it QE. I get emails, but it changed things. So value moved up. Energy stocks also finally started moving up. Another classic value group, particularly as oil moved over $60. There's a lot of people, I think, who are calling for energy stocks to do better just on a mean reversion theory for the 2010s. They were the dramatic underperformer in the last decade, and there tends to be that kind of mean reversion. So I'm not entirely in the camp that everyone will pay anything for growth. I think that there are some elements here of value that could do very well.
Jason, you cover Netflix, we were just talking about. You also cover Roku. That stock did extraordinarily well in 2019, and we've been talking about the streaming wars and how 2020 is a big year to see how that plays out. How is an investor to play that? What are the milestones that they should look for throughout the year to decide whether it's time to buy or sell or what?
Sure. So, I mean, look, when you talk about a momentum stock, that would probably be at the top of the list. Very highly valued, but big opportunity if they're successful. So next week is a Consumer Electronics Show. The company historically puts out metrics around streaming hours and active accounts. And so right now investors are trying to gauge what will be good enough. And then the question, they start to collect revenue for helping the Disney Plus, the Apple Plus generate subscribers. And so as you well reported, Disney was incredibly promotional kind of within the fourth quarter, deals with Verizon, a lot of discounts. But after that kind of initial period ends, the the Roku's relationships with Amazon become the primary way you generate new subs, and they can exploit that for revenue. So that's what investors should be looking for.
Jason, where is Amazon headed this year? I mean, we saw the stock up double digits last year, but it still underperformed the broader market.
So look, going into, for most of 2019, Amazon was probably most growth investors' top positions. The company did a very good job of managing expectations around the margin pressure from one-day prime. We've also started to see margin pressure around AWS. The question I think is going to be in the short term, can they maintain growth at AWS relative to what the pressure from Microsoft and building pressure from Google, and will investors tolerate margin pressure there if they can sustain revenue? And so, look, for that stock specifically, we think they had a great fourth quarter on the e-commerce side. AWS probably did slow, but that has been the trend. The question is kind of what is the tone for next year with margin around AWS?
Yeah, exactly. We're going to talk some more Amazon with Mark Mahaney a little later in the hour. Bob Pisani. Okay. Jason, thanks.
Thank you.
Still to come here on Squawk Alley. What about chip stocks? Can they continue their surge into 2020? We break it down with a top analyst after the break. Stay with us.
We set out to make the...
Hi, I'm back. I just set a personal best on my park run. Feels great.
That's lovely, Mike. I think you've earned the right to put all the bins out.
Hey?
With Vitality Life Insurance, you get properly rewarded when you're active. In fact, you could save over £730 every year in discounts and rewards from our partners. Join over 1 million customers. Just search Vitality Life. Vitality. Positively different. Annual savings available with certain plans and are dependent on members' usage of rewards available. Terms and conditions apply.
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations. You'll also get live commercial-free news, plus live play-by-play games from NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Want TuneIn to remind you when the big NFL game is about to get underway? Be sure notifications are allowed on your phone and search NFL on the TuneIn app. Find the game you want to hear under events and tap Notify Me. We'll let you know exactly when it's time to listen in for kickoff.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Haskell gobbles up the rebound and slams it down.
Get your favorite NBA team right here on TuneIn.
A step back, deep three is up and in.
Search NBA on TuneIn and hear all the action. The NBA lives on TuneIn.
Did you know your favorite radio stations are in your pocket? Yes, the TuneIn app lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio anywhere you want. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local.
Big year. NVIDIA, Micron, and Qualcomm among those seeing huge gains in 2019. AMD leading that group, now up more than 150% since the beginning of last year. So can that surge continue through 2020? Joining us now with some answers is Needham's Rajvindra Gill here at Post 9. Good morning.
Good morning.
How do we think about this group right now? I mean, what do you think has been priced in terms of the strength and durability of this semi-cycle by the move we've seen from the lows?
Well, I think a lot of it's priced in. I think investors anticipated a bottom in the cycle, and so they bought stocks pretty aggressively. A lot of these stocks were trading at 5-year valuation lows, sometimes 7-year lows at the beginning of the year. So we saw the semiconductor index up about 60%. That's almost double from the NASDAQ. Now, whether it can continue next year, I think it will. And the main takeaway is going to be any trade resolution, even if it's suboptimal, is going to drive chip stocks higher. And it's for a couple of reasons. I think, number one, business on the ground in China is pretty much frozen. All the companies I talk to that sell into China, nobody wants to build any inventory because they don't know what the tariff rates are going to be. So if you're a big Chinese company or a small company, you're not building inventory. Once we know what the tariff rates are going to be, then they're going to start to rebuild. The second thing is that we're at historical low levels of distribution inventory. So there's not a lot of excess inventory in the channel. We saw a lot of significant order rate cuts starting in October of 2018. And so we're pretty much done with this inventory correction that has lasted more than a year. We're coming to the bottom. So if we see a stimulus plan coming out of China, if we see a resolution on trade, then we're going to see a restocking in demand. So demand is going to start to pick back up again. And since there's a limited number of inventory, we can see a pretty big rebuild.
Where does Intel versus AMD go from here? Because Intel's been having PC chip supply issues. AMD for years and years could do well for a little while, but only until Intel got its act together. But things seem to have changed over there. Is 2020 going to be a pivotal year to see whether the whole narrative on that kind of mega battle in chips has changed?
Well, I mean, this has been a historical, narrative, Intel versus AMD on the CPU side as well as on the data center side. I think that will continue. I think the bigger picture, though, is that there's a return to spending by the hyperscalers. So Facebook, Google, and Microsoft and Amazon, there was a big inventory correction in hyperscaler spending for the past year. They've now returned to start building out their data center. That's having a positive impact on Intel, is having a positive impact on NVIDIA and other companies in the supply chain. So there are going to be a number of catalysts next year for the semiconductor industry, in addition to some sort of trade resolution. We're going to have 5G. 5G on the smartphone side. All my conversations in Asia, all my discussions are talking about anywhere between 175 million to 250 million 5G phones next year. We have 20 operators that are already deploying 5G services. The RF content, the radio frequency content, the semiconductor content is going to go up 2 to 4x per phone. Because you're going to have more frequency bands, more antennas, more power amplifiers, more filters. And that's just on the smartphone side. On the infrastructure side, the number of base stations that are being built out by China Mobile, China Unicom, same thing in South Korea, is also going to increase. There's a lot of semiconductor content there. The second thing is memory. Memory is a very key component to the overall semiconductor industry. Memory pricing is bottomed in NAND and DRAM. There's some checks that are indicating that NAND pricing could be up 30-40% next year. So we're kind of getting into a recovery in memory as well.
So it begs the question then, what is your top pick within the sector? Because I feel like it's an important conversation to have, and these are certainly key trends in 2020, but many of them, I think, have already been anticipated by investors.
No, I think that's a fair point. And the valuations are getting stretched. So we're talking about, back to kind of peak levels we were 3-4 years ago. However, the only thing I would say is consensus estimates for the group are factoring in maybe about 2% year-over-year growth in the first half versus the first half of last year. So that's not a lot of growth. So that's an easy compare because first half of last year, the group was down 17%. So we're coming off an easy compare. So that's one thing I want to say. I do agree that we do need to see estimate revisions upwards for 2020 and 21. My top pick is on semiconductor, which is basically supplies image sensors, power management chips for autonomous driving, electric vehicles, as well as computer vision and factory automation. We can forecast $3 of long-term earnings over the next 2 to 3 years. The stock's around $25, so on a long-term earnings basis, it's cheap. We also like Micron. We think Micron, the valuation is going to start to expand on a price-to-book basis as we investors realize that we're coming out of a recovery. We're going into a recovery, and we're seeing a lot of demand for NAND and DRAM. Micron's trading only about 1.7 times book value. Its median book value over 7-8 years is 2 times. So just getting just a 2 times book value, you're going to get a $70 price target. So there's not that much to go. And on the 5G side, we like Skyworks and Qorvo, which is supplying RF content in smartphones. Those stocks have run, but we think the content is going to be pretty significant. And all the OEMs that we've talked to are building aggressively, whether it's Apple, Samsung, or the Chinese OEMs. They're building aggressively for 5G. Whether they sell through or not is going to be another story, but they're building for it.
All right, some themes to play still after that big run last year. Roger, thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And when we return, Mark Mahaney's top 10 internet surprises of 2020. Got Alphabet, got Amazon, and others in there. They might not do exactly what you expect. We're back after a quick break.
Grubhub, America's leader in food delivery.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? We've got you covered. With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to every NFL game live as it's happening.
LaShawn McCoy has an opening on the right side, punches into the end zone for the touchdown.
Or catch it later on demand.
Offset backs behind Mahomes. The give is to Williams. Starts right, cuts it back to the left, and flows into the end zone for the touchdown.
You call the plays. Follow the NFL anytime, anywhere, all season long with TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
Pascal gobbles up the rebound and slams it down.
Get your favorite NBA team right here on TuneIn.
A step back, deep three is up and in.
Search NBA on TuneIn and hear all the action. The NBA lives on TuneIn.
TuneIn is remembering the biggest college sports moments of the decade, like this one from 2018, when Texas kicker Cameron Dicker nails the game-winning field goal in the Red River Showdown against Oklahoma.
A 40-yard field goal try. Good snap and hold. The kick on its way, and the kick is good! It's good! Dicker, the kicker, comes through, and with 9 seconds...
Search college sports on TuneIn to be there for the moments that go down in history.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour, but we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
You might already know that TuneIn allows you to listen to all the pro sports leagues wherever you go. But did you know TuneIn is also home to the wide world of college sports?
Open three, DeAndre Hunter got it! Handoff Carruthers, big hole right side. He leaps and he surges in, touchdown!
From live college football, basketball, and baseball games to podcasts and coaches shows fueling your love for the game in your school. And the best part is, it's all free. Search college sports to find your team or league.
Details still trickling out about Carlos Ghosn's escape from Japan. Phil LeBeau has the latest, and he's here to catch us up. Hey, Phil.
Hey, Mike, the big question is how exactly was Carlos Ghosn able to be brought out of Japan without anybody detecting? Remember, he was under house arrest. They had cameras on his house. They had guards outside of his house. And yet, sometime, as near as we can determine, between Sunday and Monday, he was taken by private jet first to Turkey and then on to Beirut. By the way, Turkey today arrested some pilots who are linked to the Ghosn escape. They've not been charged with anything, but they are being questioned by the Turkish government. And within the last half hour, we've heard from Carlos Ghosn saying there has been speculation in the media that my wife Carol and other members of my family played a role in my departure from Japan. All such speculation is inaccurate and false. I alone arranged for my departure. My family had no role whatsoever. Meanwhile, police in Japan have raided the home where Carlos Ghosn was at, and they are trying to get some clues, trying basically to figure out how did this happen. And we have yet to hear from them, John, in terms of an explanation. And believe me, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out. Japan has egg on their face right now for having somebody under house arrest with guards and cameras, and yet he popped up in Lebanon on Monday, and a lot of people in Japan were going, what? How did that happen?
Yes, Phil LeBeau, we are eagerly awaiting those details to see if there are any instrument cases involved, among other things. Thank you for that. Meanwhile, European markets set to close in just a few minutes. Seema Modi has a breakdown. A lot of green I see, Seema.
Yeah, that's exactly right, John. A very strong start to the new year for European equities, boosted by those fresh stimulus measures out of China, also shaking off a weak PMI reading out of the UK. In terms of what's leading us higher, it's those cyclical groups, financials, miners, the automotive sector pacing the gains. And take a look at the European 600 banking index hitting its highest level since May of last year, in part because analysts expect capital requirements for the European banks to stabilize in 2020 after years of increases. Now, despite the gains and the cool down that we've seen in trade tensions between the U.S. and China, Hong Kong protests creating some new challenges for the European banks. HSBC has been forced to close branches and suspend some ATMs across the region after protesters vandalized two iconic bronze-lined statues outside its main offices in Hong Kong. The protesters defaced the lines as retribution for closing an account linked to the pro-democracy movement. So that's a story we're certainly watching. And the UK, meantime, is facing backlash over its stance on the Hong Kong protests. Multiple outlets reporting this morning that China has temporarily blocked a planned cross-border listing between the Shanghai and London stock exchanges due to its support for the protesters. So certainly a development story, but one that we're watching as it becomes more pertinent to the European financial story. Mike, back to you.
Absolutely. Seema, thank you very much. Time now for a news update. Sue Herrera has that for us back at HQ. Good morning, Sue.
Good morning, Mike. Here's what's happening at this hour, everyone. Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison was confronted by angry residents as he toured New South Wales. Locals criticized him for the lack of equipment provided to deal with the devastating wildfires there.
I'm not surprised people are feeling very raw at the moment. And that's why I came today, to be here, to see it for myself, to offer what comfort I could, but you can't always in every circumstance. I think everyone understands that.
A Hong Kong legislator was repeatedly sprayed in the face by police with pepper spray during a protest last night. This as hundreds of thousands of people packed Hong Kong streets for a New Year's Day protest march. And back here at home, Berkeley, California has imposed a 25-cent fee on single-use cups at restaurants and coffee shops. The ordinance is called Disposable Free Dining. It went into effect yesterday. Backers of the measure say it's meant to reduce the number of cups that are thrown away. A number of states across the country ushering in new measures just like that this year. That's the news update this hour. Back downtown to you guys, Morgan.
I have mixed feelings about that one, too. I'm not going to lie. I really do.
A lot of people do.
Sue Herrera, thank you. About 2 hours into the first trading day of 2020, stocks are rallying to start the year with fresh record intraday highs for all of the major averages, the Dow, the S&P, and the NASDAQ, which is back above 9,000. Don't go anywhere. We're back after a quick break.
Shipskis presents. TuneIn is remembering the biggest college sports moments of the decade, like this one from 2018, when Texas kicker Cameron Dicker nails the game-winning field goal in the Red River Showdown against Oklahoma.
A 40-yard field goal try. Good snap and hold. The kick on its way, and the kick is good! It's good! Dicker, the kicker, comes through, and with 9 seconds...
Search college sports on TuneIn to be there for the moments that go down in history. Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? We got you covered. With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to every NFL game live as it's happening.
LaShawn McCoy has an opening on the right side, punches into the end zone for the touchdown.
Or catch it later on demand.
Offset backs behind Mahomes. The give is to Williams. Starts right, cuts it back to the left, and blows into the end zone for the touchdown.
You call the plays. Follow the NFL anytime, anywhere, all season long with TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
Be better informed, be better prepared. The Better Network is on TuneIn. This is Brent Musburger. Search BETR and start hanging out with me and my guys in the desert weekday afternoons. The Better Network is now on TuneIn.
Pascal gobbles up the rebound and slams it down.
Catch your favorite NBA team right here on TuneIn.
A step back, deep three is up and in.
Search NBA on TuneIn and hear all the action. The NBA lives on TuneIn.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards at the goal line. It's intercepted.
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today.
Welcome back to Squawk Alley. RBC out with its highly anticipated top 10 internet surprises of 2020. The analyst behind that note, Mark Mahaney, joins us now. Mark, Happy New Year. All right, I think we might have had a little technical difficulty there, so we'll bring in Mark once we have him up and running. In the meantime, just getting a check on where we stand with the major averages. The Dow is up 172 points. The S&P is also up about 0.3% right now. We saw fresh record intraday highs for all of the major averages in this first trading day of 2020. And of course, one of the sectors that is really leading the gains are those tech stocks once again.
They are indeed. We were just talking about semiconductors. AMD having a very strong start to the year, up 4%.
Yeah, in fact, across the board with tech hardware. High beta tech has worked all last year and now into the new year.
All right. Well, I think we have Mark Mahaney up and running again. So, Mark, we're going to welcome you back to Squawk Alley. Happy New Year. Thanks for joining us.
Happy New Year, Morgan.
All right. So, these top 10 internet surprises in 2020, you got some that are certainly, I think, stoking some debate right now, most notably Uber and Lyft achieving profitability in 2020. How'd you get there?
That's probably our biggest surprise. Look, what we're trying to do here is try to come up with some thought-provoking ideas, try to get a sense of where the debates are on the street, and maybe provide a little entertainment value, too. Uber and Lyft have both surprised the street, one with the magnitude of their losses this last year in 2019 and the projections for this year. They also surprised the street a little bit by saying they'd bring up profitability to 2021. We think it's not a probability, but it's a distinct possibility that they actually achieve that this year through a variety of things. And Uber has kind of an advantage here in that they've got more levers to pull, like selling their India Eats asset, which we think is generating a couple $100 million in EBITDA losses. Also through price actions and getting some leverage against things like insurance costs. So this would clearly be a surprise. Look, we like both stocks. Uber's our #1 pick for the year, in part because we think they'll prove out this path to profitability. They may not get there this year, but if they can get close to it, the stock can materially outperform.
Yeah, and certainly I think probably to dig into that even further, one of your other surprises here is that the 2019 IPOs roar back. How do you see that? Is that a fundamental story for many of these hard-hit names in 2019 that went public? Or is it just, I guess we'll leave it there. Why?
No, that's the right, Morgan, that's the right question. And I guess we're doubling down a little bit on this Uber Lyft point. But there are also some other assets in there, like Pinterest and even Chewy, the online, pet retailer. We thought were good assets. And a lot of these had pressures because of lockup expirations. The stocks were probably mispriced at the time of their IPOs, but the market also went through this growth to value orientation pretty quickly, and the timing wasn't good for some of these assets. But we think there's some good assets in there. They clearly underperformed last year. Really, all 7 of the U.S. listed internet IPOs materially or somewhat underperformed last year. We think that creates a little bit of an opportunity to the upside. Uber, Lyft, and particularly Pinterest. I think all 3 of those have oversold. People can step in now, move on beyond the debate, step in on negative sentiment and and generate returns.
Mark, also kind of going against the prevailing thought on Amazon, basically saying you think that profitability will plummet this year. In other words, that Amazon will continue to spend heavily, well up and over and above what the street currently thinks. What are you seeing right there? And I guess how much of a jolt would that be to investors?
So, Mike, you and I have looked at Amazon for many years here. Amazon is a company that has never shied away from investment
technology. What do you think is the best way, assuming that, government regulation is not there to protect us per se? What do you suggest for your corporate clients that they do?
Sure. So first off, there's actually been a lot of great progress against robocalls in 2019, both on the regulatory and technology side. On the regulatory side, the carriers have now received higher levels of empowerment to go after and block some of these robocalls, so monitor them. When they detect patterns that look like it's not legitimate, they are now authorized to block them. There's also some new technology. It has kind of an interesting name. It's called Shaken and Stir. So either a Martini or James Bond reference, but Stir is for those business systems, the VoIP systems, and Shaken is for cell and landline. And what these technologies will do is it'll make it so that when you get caller ID information, it'll be authenticated such that it's going to be much harder to spoof. The challenge is that it's going to take some time to implement these new technologies across the board. And in the interim, consumers and businesses really need to have a very heightened state of alert anytime they get a text or a phone call, because it's very likely not coming from the source that the caller ID says that it is.
So how is McAfee seeing the business spending when it comes to cybersecurity? I mean, has it been steadily accelerating at an exponential speed, or are they tapering it back and being more selective about how they invest?
So what we've seen is businesses now recognize that they need to protect all of the technologies that they're using to run their business. In 2019, and we'll see the trend continue in 2020, there's a significant movement and embracing of cloud technologies. And with that move of business to the cloud, we see cyber threats now starting to target the cloud environment. So one of the things that McAfee has done is we've extended our enterprise portfolio to include both traditional environments and cloud. And where we see a lot of the business investment is making sure that as they move to the cloud to run their business, that they can protect those environments as well as their traditional environments.
Steve, give us a sense of how much of the cyber crime or cyber, the issues that people are dealing with, the threats, how much of that is state-sponsored versus maybe individual or criminal? Do we have a sense of kind of that breakdown these days?
So we don't have very specific quantitative breakdowns, but we do see some interesting patterns. For example, last year we saw a major ransomware campaign. It was called the Sodinokibi campaign. And what was interesting about this was it very specifically targeted North America and Western Europe. The way that it did that is part of the code looked at what was the local language that was installed on the computer that got infected. And if it was one of those languages from the former Soviet Union, it would basically not run. What that essentially did is even if individuals or businesses in certain parts of the world got targeted or were exposed to this ransomware, it was essentially benign on their environment and only selectively impacted certain parts of the world. So whether that was a cyber crime organization that was focusing on areas that they wouldn't be prosecuted or other reasons, those are typically some of the reasons we see that sort of behavior.
Hey, Steve, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate your thoughts. Steve Grobman, Chief Technology Officer for McAfee, joining us on the phone from Dallas, Texas. All I know is on the robocalls, I don't answer my phone unless I know exactly who it is, because I get 3, 4, 5 a day, it seems like.
Yeah, I have a Fargo area code still, so I don't get quite as many, but I will say that, I have answered them. And typically the delay is what always gets you. It's sort of this long delay. You say hello, and then they're like, we're offering you free everything.
Exactly.
And you know that they're absolutely not going to take that call.
Exactly. So, but again, don't bother robocalling me, because I'm not going to pick up. Right now, let's head down to our 99.1 studios in Washington, D.C. for World and National Headlines with Nathan Hager. Nathan.
Caller ID is a very good thing.
Thank you, Paul. Carlos Ghosn says his family played no role in his escape from Japan. In an emailed statement, the former Nissan and Renault chairman says media reports his wife Carol and other family members helped him are false. In his words, I alone organized my departure. Ghosn is in Lebanon after fleeing Japan by way of Istanbul. Interpol has issued a warrant for his arrest, and that could set up legal action in Lebanon. The Pentagon says the U.S. is prepared to send more forces into Iraq to defend against Iran-backed militias that stormed the embassy in Baghdad this week. Defense Secretary Mark Esper told reporters there are indications Iran may be planning further attacks. Earlier, he told Fox News President Trump is all for taking preemptive action if needed.
He wants to make sure that our forces are well taken care of, that we're capable of accomplishing our mission on the ground. And he's absolutely correct that if anybody challenges us, they will be met with a severe response, a strong response by U.S. forces.
In the past, President Trump has called for withdrawing U.S. forces from overseas entanglements, but in recent months, Middle East deployments have climbed to more than 60,000. The Democratic presidential field just got a little thinner. Former HUD Secretary Julian Castro is ending his bid.
Today, it's with a heavy heart and with profound gratitude that I will suspend my campaign for president.
Castro was the only Latino in the race, but struggled to gain traction in polls. This leaves 14 Democrats in the running, with the Iowa caucuses 32 days away. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg.
Vatsal Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor, is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city on the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that? So in 10 years, we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water. NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials. So taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Rich is just a really good guy. The term good egg isn't enough to describe him. He's also certified organic and free range. Rich puts the cap back on everything. The toothpaste, the olive oil, the shampoo, everything. He lets his 10-year-old nephew beat him at virtual tennis, even though he can straight up slay his 10-year-old nephew in virtual tennis. When the toilet paper is running low, Rich replaces the roll on the actual holder, not just on the back of the toilet. Rich is texting and driving. Rich, no. What are you doing, Rich? I was just telling everyone how great you are. Texting and driving makes good people look bad. Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Introducing a new podcast, ESPN Daily. When you want to go beyond your feed, when you want to get inside the score, when you want to get behind the highlight, there's ESPN Daily. Go deeper into the stories of the moment. Get the exclusive access and insider perspective that only ESPN can give you. ESPN Daily, hosted by me, Mina Kimes. Listen now to ESPN Daily on TuneIn.
You might already know that TuneIn allows you to listen to all the pro sports leagues wherever you go. But did you know TuneIn is also home to the wide world of college sports?
Open three, DeAndre Hunter got it! Hand off Carruthers, big hole right side. He He leaps and he surges in. Touchdown.
From live college football, basketball, and baseball games to podcasts and coaches shows fueling your love for the game in your school. And the best part is, it's all free. Search college sports to find your team or league.
Pascal gobbles up the rebound and slams it down.
Catch your favorite NBA team right here on TuneIn.
A step back deep three is up and in.
Search NBA on TuneIn and hear all the action. The NBA lives on TuneIn.
New year, new decade. Sounds like a perfect time to start anew with a subscription to TuneIn Premium. Skip the ads and listen more in 2020 with commercial-free music and news from MSNBC, CNBC, Fox News Talk, and more. Sports fans, we got you covered too with every NFL, NBA, NHL, and college sports game. Not to mention Major League Baseball come spring training. Don't settle for same this year. Search Premium to upgrade today.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? We've got you covered. With TuneIn Premium, you can listen to every NFL game live as it's happening.
LaShawn McCoy has an opening on the right side, punches into the end zone for the touchdown.
Or catch it later on demand.
Offset backs behind Mahomes to give his to Williams. Starts right, cuts it back to the left, and blows into the end zone for the touchdown.
You call the plays. Follow the NFL anytime, anywhere, all season long with TuneIn Premium. Upgrade today.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour. But we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium.
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats.
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world. Search news to hear what's happening now.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Stocks continue to move higher as U.S. markets reopen following the New Year's Day holiday. Intraday record highs have been hit. The gains followed a rally in overseas markets after China's central bank said it will free up more money for lending. In the U.S., the government said applications for unemployment aid declined last week, matching analysts' forecasts. We look at the numbers every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg Radio. S&P 500 is up 0.25%, up 8. The Dow's up 0.6%, up 166, and the Nasdaq's up 0.6%, up 50. The 10-year is currently up 11.30 seconds with a yield of 1.87%. West Texas Intermediate crude has been on both sides of the ledger. Right now, it's down 0.5% at 60.77 a barrel. COMEX gold's up 0.4% at 15.2950 an ounce. The dollar yen stands at 108.41. The euro's at $1.1174. The British pound at $1.3128. A drive by Mexico's national oil company to drill new wells at 20 priority fields, largely using smaller local service providers, is faltering, with the company expected to rebid some of the work in the year ahead. Industry analysts say they see little evidence the decision by Petróleos Mexicanos to use a closed bidding process with pre-selected companies is speeding up drilling at a time when the government is pressing to boost the stalled economy. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash. I'm Greg Jarrett.
You're listening to Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Well, in hindsight, of course, trade was one of the big issues impacting financial markets in 2019. Now it appears that we're going to get a phase one deal signed on January 15th. The question is, what does trade bring us in 2020? There's no person better to chat about that than Sean Donnan. He's a senior trade reporter for Bloomberg News, joins us on the phone in Washington, D.C. Sean, thanks so much for joining us. So I know you're out with a really interesting column talking about trade and trying to put some framework around 2020. What are some of your key takeaways as we think about where trade might take us this year?
Well, I think the first thing is that it's just not going to go away as an issue in 2020. I think there's a tendency to think that this phase one deal with China is going to mark the end of the fight that Donald Trump has had with China. I think that's anything but the case. We're going to see that continue. There's a broader economic standoff or conflict that was actually developing before Donald Trump took office, and that we've seen only grow under his watch. So the president himself has tweeted out that he's going to sign this phase one deal January 15th, but that he'll be going to China later on to hammer out phase two. A lot of skepticism here in Washington that will come this year. But again, we're one of the big words for 2019 in relation to trade was uncertainty. And as we go into 2020, I think we keep hoping that there's going to be a more certain path in terms of trade, but there's still a lot of uncertainty out there.
And certainly a lot of people recognize that. The idea being that 2020 will be less volatile when it comes to trade headlines simply because the election is coming up and President Trump has an incentive not to necessarily rock the boat too much. That said, there's also a feeling that if you're not necessarily imposing tariffs on, say, retail or other things that will directly raise prices for consumers, how is it going to really affect the markets, right? I mean, some of the bigger issues, the sort of intellectual property issues and other sort of things that will be debated, how will that kind of bleed through and manifest in a market situation?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's one of the hard things for investors to figure out in 2019 was how much of an impact the trade wars are actually having on companies' bottom lines. And you can see it, and we track the transcripts from earnings calls every quarter, and you've seen a growing number of questions about the impact of tariffs on costs for inputs, but also as a damper on demand. And, beyond the consumer sector, we've seen a clear impact on the manufacturing sector from the trade wars. The Federal Reserve out over the Christmas break with a study that pointed to a decline overall in employment and higher costs for the manufacturing sector as a result of the trade wars and the tariffs that have gone into place since 2018. It was calling that an unprecedented episode in American economic history. So, but at the same time, all of that is happening against the backdrop of what is a pretty healthy economy. The U.S. economy is still 2/3 driven by consumers rather than manufacturing. So it's able to absorb a lot of the blows from trade, and that's kind of what's hiding things away. But one of the features of the trade wars is that they're not. We've gotten used to them, but they're not going away. This phase one deal is not going to see an end to these tariffs. There's still going to be tariffs in place on $360 billion in imports from China. That's a huge volume of trade, and that is likely to have an impact going into this year. So we don't know yet. We're living this kind of natural economic experiment. We don't yet know the extent of the economic damage that the trade wars are going to do. But it's pretty clear, or it's increasingly clear, that there is some damage happening.
So, Sean, you're the expert in trade, so maybe you can help me out here. Do we ever get to see this agreement and to really analyze it? Because I haven't seen anything.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So it's Robert Lighthizer, the U.S. Trade Representative, was waving around an 86-page draft to reporters before Christmas. That hasn't been released yet. What they have been doing over the break has been working on a translation of that document in Chinese.
I'm not buying that.
The Chinese translation.
What do you think about that? Is that real, or is that just sounds...
Well, I think
you mean that it takes them that long to translate something?
Yeah, can't you just go to Google Translate?
Well, yeah, it's a legal document, though, and you got to get the lawyers involved, so that always takes longer. And it's worth pointing out that that's a perfectly normal step in trade agreements, and it takes. This is this is the most normal thing about this process in many ways. And January 15th, when they signed this document, the Trump administration has said they will release this text. So we'll see those 86 pages, and we'll be able to see how real this deal is.
Right. Just real quick here, about a minute left. I'm wondering whether you think that the sort of consensus idea that President Trump will avoid rocking the boat when it comes to trade ahead of the 2020 elections. Do you buy that?
I think predicting what Donald Trump is going to do is a fool's game.
Good pun.
I think it's a very easy to see scenarios in which we get an escalation against Europe or even a re-escalation against China in 2020.
Sean Donnan, thanks so much for joining us. Sean's a senior trade reporter for Bloomberg News, joining us on the phone. I think what I think is most interesting is, President Trump saying that he is planning on going over to China for a phase 2 deal. That seems, if that occurs, that would be meaningful to the markets, I think, because then you're talking about some of the harder issues. I guess the question is, you're looking a little skeptical.
Yeah, no, I'm wrinkling my forehead.
Yes.
I mean, to me, I just have to wonder, great, sure, more substantial issues, but are there tariffs coming on? Are there, any market moving or business affecting decisions that are actually coming out of that? I feel like with the tariffs, that was directly affecting a number of different industries, and it actually rose prices for a number of things. It created a lot of uncertainties for CFOs. I guess what I'm trying to say is, how much uncertainty will that create?
Yep. I think if you just look at the market action that we've had over the last couple of weeks, and certainly for the fourth quarter, a phase 1 deal and maybe nothing else, assuming there's some meat to that phase 1 deal, that's kind of all the markets need right here. And if you're a politician and you have an election, perhaps that's the right formula.
Although people are saying that it's already been baked in, and that there still is some fundamental worry underneath the market, whether it has to do with shrinking profit margins or anything else, and that will start to become more apparent as the earnings start to roll out. Well, it is the first day of trading in 2020, and we are seeing a rally, albeit off earlier highs. The Nasdaq up 0.6%, with the Dow, S&P up 0.3%. Small caps lagging behind. I'm Lisa Abramowitz alongside Paul Sweeney. This is Bloomberg Markets.
In addition to Bloomberg Radio, you can catch the latest news and biggest newsmakers on Bloomberg Television. Look for us on DirecTV Channel 353 or check your local listing.
Ah, Socrates, solved the hearing aid paradox yet?
No, Plato, I still don't understand how a sale of tiny hearing aids can also be massive.
It's simple relativity.
Oh, shut up, Albert.
But it's true. Specsavers have tiny hearing aids with advanced Bluetooth technology. And now you can save a massive £400 on selected hearing aids. Like a mouse relative to an elephant, yeah?
A mouse? The hearing aid sale at Specsavers. Tiny hearing aids, massive savings. Terms and conditions apply. Sale ends 31st of January. Ask in store for details.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
We can't make traffic move faster during rush hour. But we can help you catch up on the news with TuneIn. With live around-the-clock news from MSNBC.
In the UK, they're significantly worse. When the president gets up to the podium...
CNBC and Fox News Talk.
The Fox News poll sizing up the race for 2020 found that each of the 5 top Democrats...
You can use your stop and go for good by staying in touch with the world.
Search news to hear what's happening now.